time for Dan and Aldo to bare their souls.
I love the Chicago Bears more than I do masturbating, and that is a lot.
Then, with 3 seconds left, Bob Avellini throws a 30-something-yard touchdown pass to Greg Latta, and the Bears win, and I literally shit my pants. I swear to God, I literally did.
Eric Kramer, for me, I love the guy. He's a tragic figure. I mean, he embodies all that is.
If they don't run the ball here, I'm going to vomit. I swear to God.
Look, I don't mean any disrespect. He just didn't play that well. Not for a guy of his caliber.
You know, they won, but I'm going to be miserable all week because they stunk.
I don't really have any recollection of that at all, but I guess perhaps I blacked it all out.
So, Dan, tape is the ultimate tool for scouts and for coaches to evaluate players, to detect plays and so forth. And they spend hours looking at tape, right? Why do they so often get shit wrong?
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan and Aldo.
Oh, yeah. The applause might be for our special guest, John Buffone, but he won't join us for another 15 or 20 minutes. It is Dan Aguirre and Aldo. Dan, how are you, brother?
I'm well. I got a heavy story to share with you if you'd like to hear it, or maybe we could save it for later. It's up to you.
Hold on a second. They're saying no audio. What the heck is going on here? Got to be able to hear me. There's absolutely.
Is it from my mic or for both of us?
I think from everybody in America. Roy, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? We had this problem last week. Somebody said, hey, there's missing audio in your show. I don't get what's going on.
I thought we were good last week. I thought it was 2 weeks ago.
That could have been 2 weeks. Oh,
Yeah, I think last week we had the marathon 5-hour show that went really well.
John says he can hear us, so I'm trusting John, and I'm going to trust that Roy
is that Santucci? He's a scumbag, lying piece of shit. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's pick up where you left off. You were going to tell us about your sex life or something?
No. This isn't about my sex life, but it's a terrible predicament. And I'm going to speak vaguely on this in terms of his name and the town. I will just say to this. My stepdad is a great guy. He has a son. And again, I'm not going to say their names. Like when my mom died last year, I asked where his son was, and they said, oh, he had to work today plus COVID. And, he really wishes you condolences. Of course, I didn't think anything else of.
Mm-hmm.
My nephew sends me a link at Saturday, Sunday morning, depending on your perspective. It's like 4 a.m. Sunday, but still Saturday night because I haven't gone to bed yet. And says, you won't believe this fucking shit. And I was like, what? And he said that my stepdad thinks that his son is about to go to jail for a DUI. And he said, so I kept asking him, well, how much time is he going to get? He's like, I don't know. I hear it could be bad. And he's like, well, did he kill somebody? What do you mean it's going to be bad? Because normally a DUI, you pay a terrible fine, you lose your license, maybe you get the breathalyzer. It's inconvenient, it sucks, but you don't go to jail. If Vince Neil from Motley Crue killed a guy drunk in '84 and still served 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So he did a Google search on him. I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to leave the town out because I don't want anyone to be able to access it right off.
Okay.
Let's just say a blank man has been sentenced to, and you'll get to the point of this real quickly, has been sentenced to 109 years in prison for possession and distribution of child pornography. Judge blank sentenced this man, 46, to an active jail sentence of 25 years minimum, and suspended the remaining 84 years. This gentleman, who is, I guess you could say, my stepbrother, pled guilty in this court, and again, I'm being vague on purpose, to one possession of child pornography received it. Okay, he just has a litany of charges going back to an arrest in 2017 that none of us knew about. This guy's been married since like 1997, whatever, to a woman. He seemed to be, they couldn't have kids. He didn't care. He said, I love my wife. She's whole, even if she can't have, I mean, the dude was mega supportive. I could have sworn on my life that this guy was a good guy. And the predicament that I'm in, my stepdad doesn't know.
Ooh.
Either he doesn't know, because see, my stepdad's 74, or that's his way of being coy, like he's ashamed, and he's telling my nephew this DUI story, or he doesn't know. So now my nephew and I are both thinking, is it our responsibility to tell him that his son is in jail for child pornography? Not only that, he probably will never see him again because my stepdad's 74, and this guy is going to pull 25 years minimum. He can't get parole.
If he's convicted.
No, he's convicted. He was sentenced.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was sentenced. Yeah, so again, the reason he didn't come to my mom's service, it sounds like he couldn't leave the fucking state of Virginia. Gotcha. And couldn't come across the border to West Virginia to attend. So I feel so badly for his wife.
Yeah.
I feel like if my stepdad finds out and he really doesn't know, this could fucking kill him. So I think I'm going to go with not telling him. I don't know if I'm making a mistake, but hopefully he knows and is just playing coy, and that's his way of being in denial and not telling people because he's ashamed. But I can't confirm that, and both of us just feel awful because, like, we both know, should we tell him? I can't do it. I don't think I can tell him. And I guess nobody ever thinks that somebody they know is capable of looking at child porn, let alone distributing it.
Absolutely.
Now, he didn't molest a kid or anything. I'm not trying to say that makes him any less heinous, that he doesn't deserve the charges he got. But like I said, it's the profound shock and sadness and just confounding thoughts in my head. I'm incapable of describing them.
So I think the big question here is, are there any pictures of you as a 10-year-old with your Peter out?
No. I met my stepdad literally the day the Bears were playing the Bengals in 1995. The doorbell rang. I answered it. I said something to my mom. There's a man at the door, but my dad had died 2 years before, so I wasn't as salty as I seemed about another guy starting to come around, because my mom was only 38 when my dad died. So, I mean, kind of figured, she was going to date again. But I was salty that the game was 9-7 in the second quarter and the Bears needed a win. So I was getting back to the game. I met him when I was 15. I met his son, obviously, probably the next year whenever their relationship got real serious. Mm-hmm. So I've known him since, I'm going to guess, 96. So again, I was already 15, 16 when I met him, and he's 6 years older than me, and he was already about to get married and just seemed like a solid guy, man. It's just, man.
Sad.
But
this has been a rough week for you with news of Marilyn Manson.
Oh my God. My ex-wife just called me a, quote, hypocritical, fake liberal.
Called you that.
Yeah.
Because
she says, quote, I'm personally hurt that you would support him after this if these allegations are true. I told her, I said, how many people still listen to Michael Jackson despite the fact that there's, mounting evidence that he molested children? Not saying he did, but there's at least an argument to be made. And does that mean you can't listen to Off the Wall or Thriller anymore? I don't know. But I said, look, the Manson thing is troubling. He's been accused of sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse. I mean, all of it I denounce, and it's terrible. But again, as being a fan, a passionate fan, that doesn't mean I have to quit listening to his music, though. That doesn't change the art. Even if the man is imperfect and flawed, right, that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate his art. But unlike, I don't want to get political, but I'm going to get political. Unlike some people that worship the former president, his followers, I've never worshipped Manson anyway. He was a guy that had a great show and good music. So
Just for those
I
people
feel-
who don't know, Evan Rachel Wood, who was engaged to the musician Marilyn Manson, has accused him of, and I'll quote here, he started grooming me when I was a teenager and horrifically abused me for years. And then Mr. Manson, that's not his real name, of course, Marilyn Manson, he took to Instagram late Monday night, and this according to CNN, and wrote, obviously my art and my life have long been magnets for controversy, but these recent claims about me are horrible distortions of reality. So that's going to probably play out in the court of law, and we'll see what happens.
I was reading an article in the LA Times, and I don't remember which, it was a politician. I don't remember. I would assume a Democrat, but I don't know. I didn't retain it, and I didn't retain if it was a senator or a representative, a congressperson. But they were wanting the FBI to investigate the allegations, which again, I'm, as a fan of the guy, I'm still all for it. I mean, like I said, if he did these dreadful things, and he should be, I don't know how he could be held accountable. I mean, I know that, she said she claimed that when they broke up once, he called her 138 times in one day, which is just horrific. The only thing I can say about Manson, just to play devil's advocate, during those days, his mom was sick. He had just gone through a divorce. His mom ultimately died, and he had a cocaine addiction. So, I mean, that would all compound, just to give context, to make him make some terrible decisions, which, again, doesn't absolve him from those decisions. But in the end, the thing I was worried about, other than you take out, the allegations are going to play themselves out. Let's assume he's guilty or he's not guilty, but for whatever reason, he's alive. He's still alive, and COVID subsides and concerts come back, which sounds unrealistic right now. I can't imagine being at a show with 100,000 people ever again, but maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But would anybody book him now? I don't know. Like I was saying that tonight on my radio show. I don't know, even if he survives in a legal sense. And again, I'm a fan of his. Does that make him a pariah now, though? And I'm afraid that it does. And maybe rightfully so.
Right.
I don't have the answers to this. And like I said, she said I'm being a hypocrite and I'm a horrible liberal. So
well, it is.
What do you think? What do you think? If it was somebody you really liked, I'm not even going to ask you to pretend you like Manson, but if it was one of your one or two go-to artists of your lifetime.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of songs from Marilyn Manson's catalog that I like, the popular.
But I mean, he's not your guy. Like he's my guy is what I'm saying.
No, not at all. And it's difficult to separate the art from the human sometimes. And, I think about a year ago, I was on a road trip, a 4-hour drive up to Galena, or I don't know where the hell I was going, but we listened to some, probably a dozen Michael Jackson songs. Did I feel guilty about it? Not really, but that it crossed my mind, the allegations against him, and it does make you feel a little comfortable. But it's something I like. Roman Polanski movies. I love the filmmaker Roman Polanski.
Right, he sodomized the child.
Exactly, and he ran away from the United States. He sodomized what it was, a 13, 14-year-old girl. He should be horsewhipped for that, and worse.
And drugged her, right? Isn't he allegedly got her doped up somehow or drunk or something?
Yes, exactly. But you sit down and watch his movies, latter movies, mid-career movies, early movies like Chinatown, Rosemary's Baby, on, and they're mesmerizing. He's a gifted filmmaker. So it's a very difficult decision. It's a personal decision for everyone, and I don't think anybody should be chastised if they say, well, I know that he's committed crimes, but I still, Lena Riefenstahl, I made this joke the other day. Lena Riefenstahl, who was the German Nazi propagandist, she was a horrendous person for supporting Adolf Hitler. But in college, we studied her movies because she perfected the art of propaganda, and there's some value there, and seeing the technical aspects, and even, to use this word cautiously, artistic value of those films. Like I forgot the name of her big film, but it's a very difficult thing, no doubt about it.
So she was Roger Ailes before he was born.
Yeah, I think Roger may have looked at some of her movies over and over again. John Buffone is waiting off stage and wondering, what the hell did I get myself into? These guys are talking about Nazism and Marilyn Manson. What kind of a show is this?
Give me 30 seconds before you go to him, because he has so much energy that I'm going to just sit back and listen, and it'll be an honor to speak with him.
Excellent.
I'll just say that, and again, you're from Chicago, so I mean, you can relate. Motherfuck, man. I had vehicle problems this week again, too. Another wheel bearing. And we had 10 inches of snow on Wednesday, and then we had 6 on Saturday, and 3 on Sunday, and 2 on Monday. It's just a fucking blizzard, man. Like, can we please stop getting snow? Like, at this point, I would suck anybody's dick just to be able to mow my grass.
John just left.
Can we please have some sunshine? I've got to ask John about his Rick Meyer jersey.
Oh, that's a good place to start. Let me bring in John Buffone now. John, can you hear us?
I gotcha, fellas. What the hell are you bringing me into, by the way?
That's right.
Can I please ask you about the Rick Meyer jersey? I saw you
Absolutely.
on the day. When and why and how did you buy the Rick Meyer? Obviously, it was in the 97 season. Was it a gift or did you buy it?
I bought it, Dan. Listen, I am a fan of obscure jerseys, and just random names and just tokens of yesteryear. And so I was just perusing on the internet, and I was going through. I just typed in old Bears jerseys, and then I hit the old Google shopping thing. And for some reason, someone thought they could get some bozo to buy a Rick Meyer Bear jersey. I said, you know what? I can be that bozo. I will spend the $8 on this starter brand Rick Meyer jersey, which was my size, luckily. And I thought, wow, what a steal! And you know what? I wear it at least once every Bear season.
That's wild.
Incredible.
Oh man, how much did that cost you?
$8 plus whatever shipping was. So probably I got out of that thing with about 12, 13, $14, and it's a conversation piece every time I wear it, because someone says, where did you, in the small amount of time he was here, did they even make a jersey for him? Yep,
right.
And I got one of them.
I got a question for you. All jokes aside, like, don't be ashamed to admit this. At the time of the trade, because the Bears gave up a first-round pick for that fuck, who did not even throw one touchdown in a Bears uniform, and we gave up a first-round pick. Were you all happy at the time of the Rick Meyer trade?
Although I'll let you go, because I think I was maybe 4 years old.
I didn't know.
Not the young man.
I kept thinking to myself again, well, Kramer's still there, but okay, maybe his neck's hurt. But you know what? Rick Meyer was Rookie of the Year in the AFC in 1993. So he's had a good rookie year. He just, the last couple, maybe a fresh start. Maybe he'll be okay. At least
isn't that such a Bears thing, though? Isn't that such a Bears thing to think? Like, we can fix him.
Mm-hmm. I remember the trade vividly, and I remember thinking this is one hell of a big mistake. One hell of a big mistake, because even though he had that one season in Seattle, he always looked like a deer in the headlights. He always looked like he was overwhelmed. He always looked like he did not belong. And when he arrived in Chicago, those eyes got even bigger, and it was terrifying to see that the Bears basically gave away a first-round draft pick when I don't think there was a team in the NFL that offered more than a third rounder for this guy. This guy came out of Notre Dame with a lot of hype and kind of riding on the tails of Joe Theismann. There's just no way that this guy deserved to be a first-round draft pick. And then after that small sample size in Seattle, there was no way to convince me that he was worth a first-rounder in a trade, but typical Bears.
Try to fix the problem.
Yeah.
With a Band-Aid. With a Band-Aid. I mean, yeah, so it's always good.
Matthew Goff's a line, and apparently Garoppolo's staying in San Francisco, and now there are rumors manifesting that we may be going after Jameis Winston.
That's right. I've heard that. Jameis Winston is one of the rumors. Derek Carr is another one of the rumors. Let's talk about those two potential Bears acquisitions. Who do you want to start with, Carr or Winston, John?
Oh man, it's just like whose throwaways can we make into our treasure this year? So I see the Jameis Winston thing. He's not going to cost you. Well, he's going to cost you something, but you don't have to trade anything for him. He's a free agent. So if you want to bring him in, he would probably set Bears single season records in yardage, touchdowns, and most likely interceptions. So if you want that kind of, I guess, volatile offense, it's better than what we've seen the past couple years, probably. Derek Carr, I think, is interesting because I think that's a guy that could maybe stabilize the position. He's only 29 years old, only due $22 million against the cap next year, only 19 against the cap the year after that. That could be a guy that could maybe stabilize the position. There were rumors last year that they were going to maybe try to go out and draft Derek Carr. So this is just like a cyclical thing about who the Bears are going to go out and trade for. And as Dan said, some of the doors have been shut on the other guys. Looks like Jimmy G is going to stay put. Rumors that Matt Ryan's going to stay put. Obviously, Jared Goff and Matt Stafford have already been exchanged. And then the whole DeShaun Watson thing, I just don't think that even if Watson agreed to be traded to the Bears, I don't know if the Bears have enough to trade for him. And I think there's probably going to be a list of 2 or 3 teams that Watson says, I'll take a trade to these places. And the Bears probably just don't have the firepower to go out and get him. And you know what? I have to bring this up, and this is a little sidetrack, but is anyone else just a little bit tired of people, Bears fans, saying, we absolutely cannot give up Roquan Smith for a quarterback. We absolutely cannot give up Jalen Johnson for a quarterback. Where has everyone been for the last 35 years? We've had great linebackers. What has that got? What have you won with the great linebackers? With Urlacher and Briggs and all those other guys. What have they won with the great linebackers?
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you two a question.
That's a great point.
Let me ask you two a question. Let's just say, would you rather have Nick Foles and Roquan Smith or Josh Woods and DeShaun Watson?
Carmen DeFalco would say, who the fuck is Josh Woods?
How many? Honestly, do you think they're going to win more games with DeShaun Watson and Josh Woods or Roquan Smith and Nick Foles?
Well, your point is so right on, but I just think that I'm just one guy, and I'll let Aldo speak. I don't want to step on him.
No,
I
please.
feel that the Watson thing is just so, it's like someone's wet dream. It's not going to manifest. It's not going. Look, Stafford basically cost the Rams the same that Cutler did for us to get from Denver. Like, I would have thought Stafford would be available for maybe a first rounder, but like 2 first rounder and then a third, like, get the fuck out. And Matthew Stafford at 35 was worth all of that. What is Deshaun Watson worth? Mm-hmm. And how would we get him? Mm-hmm. Why would he want to come here? Like, we didn't even take him to dinner. I just don't see it as being viably realistic in any way. So maybe Derek Carr, but I digress. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Al.
No, I just feel like there is this thirst for Deshaun Watson that is totally understandable, but I can't give away so many assets that you're just trying to Band-Aid the rest of the team together and not be able to surround Deshaun Watson with the necessary ingredients to win football games. If you're going to trade away multiple first-round draft picks for the rest of the decade, that's one thing. But if you're also going to trade a couple of starters, the report from a legitimate news source down in Houston, somebody who covers the Houston Texans regularly, says that they want 2 first-rounders, 2 defensive starters, and 2 second-rounders.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like the Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah, exactly. Look at what it did for the Vikings. It was just not a good trade. It fucked
the Vikings, and it gave the Cowboys 3 Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to be the Vikings in that equation.
Right. And they want Roquan Smith. And that they want Jalen Johnson or Darnell Mooney. And so, heck, you can rebound from something like that, but you need to be awfully, awfully lucky. My way of building this team is find that DeShaun Watson in this next draft. There are 5 quarterbacks easily that are going to be drafted in the first round. All of them are first round quality, with the worst probably being Mac Jones, and his stock has gone up considerably in Senior Bowl week, and he didn't even play in the game. He just looks so good in practice, and he's got all these leadership skills, and he made tough throws in the practice tape and so forth. He's probably going to be the 5th quarterback chosen, so why not trade up 2 or 3 or 4 slots to grab him if indeed he's going to be a top 19 pick and you hold the 20th pick? So I don't see, trading so many assets like that. It just worries the hell out of me. Really does.
Aldo, they've been looking for DeShaun Watson for 3.5 decades. It's not as easy as just going out and saying, let's draft our franchise guy. They've tried that with Cade McNown, with Rex Grossman, with Mitch Trubisky. They've tried this before, so it's not like the drafting a guy in the first round is any more of a slam dunk than trading off the assets and bringing in a proven commodity. If Ryan Pace has shown anything, he's shown that he can draft guys in the mid to late rounds. He's found some gems in the second, third, fourth, or I should say third, fourth, fifth round. So if you have to get rid of 2 defensive starters, he found Jalen Johnson in the second round. He finds guys on the defensive line that can be plug and play guys. So what's one thing that has evaded this franchise for so long is the quarterback. And whenever he's so young and he could be here for another 10, 12, 15 years, then you can build around him then. But it's finding that piece originally that they haven't been able to do. If Ryan Pace, if he hits on Mitch Trubisky, then this is different, because he did start building the team with a quarterback. And then he did fill in all these guys with Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson and David Montgomery and Cole Kmet. And he did build a good defense. And he was able to find a Roquan Smith and find all these contributors on defense. And, just having guys really play into the system. But what is keeping that from really taking flight? The fact that you haven't had a quarterback really take the next step. So if you can take care of that, then you can start worrying about everything else. You can find a Jalen Johnson in the second round. I'm not saying Roquan Smith is going to be easy to replace, but how many points difference does Roquan Smith really make in a game? It's not as much as DeShaun Watson's going to make. And once again, we're probably just sitting here, yelling into the wind, because I don't think there's any way in hell he's being traded to Chicago. But what I'm saying is, people that are clutching onto these defensive starters, like, oh, we can't possibly get rid of these guys. What if they leave and we go 8-8? Okay, yeah, because we haven't been staring that in the eye for the last 15, 20 years. So find the guy that can stabilize the quarterback position, and then you can build around it. You can't build around nothing and then try to install the quarterback. They've been trying to do that for too long with Mike Glennon and Nick Foles. So find the guy that you can build around, and don't build around and then insert you don't build the entire car and then be like, oh crap, we got to find an engine for this thing. No, you got to start with that and then build onto it.
Well, just to play devil's advocate, the Bears, from, all indications, were an average 8-18 the last 2 years and sucked. If you listen to anyone in the national media talk about us, and maybe perhaps rightfully so, but what happened when the Texans came to Soldier Field, when they had a left tackle that they've sunk money into with the trade, but obviously on paper a huge upgrade over Charles Leno, and they had a quarterback who's a huge upgrade over Mitchell Trubisky or Nick Foles, and the Bears beat them by like 33 points. So having the quarterback and a great offensive line doesn't necessarily mean shit. So would you want to be the 8-8 Bears and maybe get a quarterback that could help you get a little bit better, maybe get to 10-6, or do you give up the whole farm for a guy that is proven in Houston that with talent around him, he's still not winning? I'm not saying that I wouldn't love to have Watson, but at what price? And I don't even think it's plausible. So I think we're wasting our time. I'd like to say briefly, I don't know if there's any validity to it. I saw on Twitter earlier, I wish I could find it, someone shared or disseminated an article that said the Bears had officially decided to move on from Mitchell Trubisky. I find that hard to believe until they actually get somebody else. He's kind of like their backup Like if you have a lady on the side that you still have sex with, because you're single and she's good, but you don't want to date her or whatever. Not that I have that in my life right now, but I'm just saying, I think we've all been there. I think he's the guy you call, in the event that you need some, so maybe you keep him around. I don't think that they've repudiated Trubisky yet.
I don't know about I'll real quick, Aldo. I don't think that they completely have set sail on that. But if anyone listened to that end of the year press conference, they really didn't bring up Mitch's name one time. So I think that they would rather. I just think that that's the absolute last possible resort. I think they'd rather draft a guy and have Nick Foles be the bridge than to bring him back. But this is why the Bears are in such an interesting situation. I shouldn't say interesting. I should say a messed up situation, because the way that their cap works out and the way that their contracts are worked out, they just seem like they are much more primed to trade off and rebuild right now than they are to go all in, because they have no space, and I don't know who they're going to sign to push them over this 8-8 barrier. But they retained the head coach and they retained the general manager, and so with a mandate of progress and a mandate of more wins, they got to find a way to improve this with very little tools and very little options. So
they allegedly offered a first-round pick for Stafford. Allegedly.
Correct.
Right.
So, that is it. They are trying to, quote unquote, win now if you're offering a first round pick for a 35-year-old quarterback.
33.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, my apologies.
They have to do stuff like that because Nagy and Pace's job are on the line. And so and I'm sure Ryan Pace doesn't give a crap if he completely sets fire to the cabinet of draft picks if he's not even going to be there in 2 years. He's trying to keep his job. So we could see an all-in with a team that I don't know if is just one or two players away from really being a Super Bowl contender.
I would rather have Jameis Winston than us trade for Carson Wentz. Wentz had a horrendous 2020 season, obviously statistically, with like 16 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. I saw that the other day. I don't know if that's accurate, but it's close to it. But there was another article was depicting how the Bears culture. We always hear about the Bears culture. Well, the Eagles culture was such that he was a disruptor. He was a Brandon Marshall type, and I loved B. Marsh, but he was the catalyst for perhaps his coach being fired in Philadelphia. Do you really want to bring that guy into town?
No.
So what are your other options then? Like you said, Derek Carr, maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, who else are you going to look at?
I like Derek Carr a lot, and I would offer a first-round and third-round pick for Derek Carr, a third-rounder, preferably in 2022. You've had success making trades with the Raiders before with the Khalil Mack trade. I like, I'll put up some highlights here that I gathered. This was, on the screen for those of you watching on the video podcast on our YouTube channel. This was Carr against the Kansas City Chiefs. He had a super game against them. He had an excellent 2020 season, but there is something about Mike Mayock and John Gruden that they're anxious to move on from this quarterback. They want to bring in their own quarterback. Those whispers started at the beginning at the end of last season, the 2019 season. So I think this guy can come in and hopefully for a low investment, you're then getting a quarterback that can get you to the Super Bowl. If you surround them with a premier Bears defense, you focus on that, you solidify the outside tackle positions, you commit to the run game, and you re-sign Allen Robinson. I think right there you've got a team that can compete in the NFC North with the Green Bay Packers for first place and definitely make a long run in the playoffs. That's with David Carr. I really believe that. And when it comes to Jameis Winston, the guy led the NFL in the 2019 season in touchdown passes, but unfortunately he also led them in interceptions.
Real 30-30 guy.
Right. So what's interesting is that Sean Payton apparently holds him in high esteem and has said that he would feel comfortable with Winston being the starter in 2021 and Taysom Hill playing a lot of snaps in relief. And so I think
sorry,
that's,
Aldo.
I was just going to say real quickly, I think that's probably, there's such a fandom of everything Sean Payton does from Ryan and Pace. That's probably what has given him interest in Jameis Winston. The guy obviously has some talent. There's no doubt about it. But can you reduce the interceptions that he throws, and can you help with some of his leadership skills, which are sometimes a bit scatterbrained?
Well, that's what I was going to say. He reminds me, not in his style of play, but with the interception problem. I can remember when Vinny Testaverde was in Tampa Bay, and he threw, I think, 35 picks in one season, and maybe 88 or 89.
Right.
And Vinny later on, of course, he was in the league a long time, but he still threw for like 40,000 yards, and he led the Browns to a playoff victory, and then took the Jets to the AFC Championship game in 1998. So he had some tangible success and was able to cut down on the earlier problems of just throwing the ball. But he was on Tampa Bay too, and they were horrible back then. But my point is, you can make adjustments. Winston could learn from that. I'm not saying that that's the guy we should go after, but just playing devil's advocate again, it is plausible that he could reduce that number. Jay Cutler had 26 picks in 2009, and he cut that down significantly the rest of his Bears tenure. He never approached 25-6 again. And again, I'll say if Jay was surrounded with, the talent of, say, Aldo. Aldo, if you were there, if Alshon and Brandon Marshall and Martellus were like on the 2010 team, like the Bears win the Super Bowl. I mean, by the time they got offensive talent, you had no defense. So if you had the Urlacher Brick, Charles Tillman run with offensive talent too, and not Devin Hester as your number one, maybe they could do something. So you don't want to make the mistake of getting a Jameis Winston. Like you said earlier, I'm reiterating and agreeing. You don't want to just have a fire sale to get him like the Vikings did. And then what? Then you're back to, you did this with Cutler. You brought him in April 2nd, 2009. I still remember the date of the fucking trade. It was such a glorious moment to be a Bear fan. You think, oh, we got our guy. He's 25, 26 years old. And then you don't have anything else around him for 4 years. Offensively. So that would almost mimic itself if you did that DeShaun Watson trade, because what else are you giving up to get him? Mm-hmm. You're going to probably lose, like you said, Darnell Mooney and maybe Roquan, maybe David Montgomery. Who knows? Like, you're going to lose key pieces. It's not like they're going to be like, well, a first rounder and Anthony Miller will do it. They're not going to take Anthony Miller from us.
Yeah.
I don't even think Anthony Miller's on this team next year. But
I bet he is. There's no accountability, though. I mean, why was Javon Wims still on the team, dropping the touchdown in the playoff game?
I think Anthony Miller was the only one who was kind of called out by name in that at the end of the year. I think it might have been George McCaskey who said that. Who said that he was very disappointed in Anthony Miller. He was more disappointed in Anthony Miller than he was Javon Wims. So they actually saved money by cutting him. So we'll see if he is actually still around. But
Dave Wannstedt said he would cut him the day after the playoff game. Dave Wannstedt,
I believe he would.
Radio, and Wani doesn't criticize anybody. He's like. He loves everybody when he's on the radio. I mean, he said, you got to cut this guy. He's got to go today.
Slim Davis is saying, Aldo, I respect you, but cut it out with this Derek Carr stuff. We got to go all in on DeShaun Watson. It's a no-brainer, and that seems to be the prevailing mood in the chat room, is that it's go all in on DeShaun or bust. And that's my problem is that we could potentially go all in on DeShaun and bust, because it is such a nuclear move, to trade so many assets. And, a lot of people are pointing to the Rams, saying, well, the Rams have not had a number one draft pick in the last 8-9 years. Well, what have they done? Yes, they went to the Super Bowl. They didn't win the Super Bowl, and they got rid of one of the probably the last guy they picked in the first round. And they're in salary cap hell. They're not going to be able to sign Leonard Floyd by all accounts unless they move some of the other high price talent.
Let's bring
that they
him
have.
back, goddammit. Let's bring Leonard back.
Please.
You can have your number back and give Robert Quinn a better look somehow.
Yeah, more money at edge rusher. That's what they need. More money spending on the edge rushing.
Exactly. No, I'm with you guys. Hey, I would love to have DeShaun Watson. I was wrong about him coming out of the draft. I had him behind Mahomes, Watson, and Watson being a far down Watson in terms of guys to draft that year. And then I had DeShone Kizer, number 3, and I had Trubisky, number 4. So,
well, let me ask you this, though, Aldo, not to interrupt, but seriously, when DeShaun still had Hopkins there and Fuller and had all these receivers to throw the ball to, and had Whitney Merciless on defense, and Watt was still in his prime, what was he doing? Yeah, they got into the playoffs. They lost in the first round every year. Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned, what happened at Soldier Field from a team at best that most people thought you just was completely overrated and terrible, the Bears, that being slightly facetious, but you get the point that they weren't considered a good team, and rightfully so, and they smashed the fucking Texans. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying to everyone that wants Watson, and in theory, again, if he was just a free agent, I'd say, oh, fuck, sign him. But to give up X and X and X and X and whatever variable else you wanted to put in this equation, he's not necessarily going to improve anything. He could make things worse because you've given up everything else to get him. And what did he do in Houston when he was surrounded by great players?
Mm-hmm. I will say that game against the Bears, they didn't have their top 3 options to throw to, and he was getting absolutely hammered behind that line. But the point is taken. I understand that you have to put guys around him. I don't know how much they're gonna lose as far as what they'd have to trade on the offensive side of the ball. They'll probably have to give up some defensive guys. But the offense itself. Now, if they would have Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet and David Montgomery, and maybe this new formula of offensive line that's shown a little bit of promise towards the end of the year, you put DeShaun Watson in that, and I don't think that I think you have an offense that can keep up. Now, and I talked about this all throughout the season, where I think as Bears fans, we have been brainwashed to think that the Bears have to have a top 5 defense every year, or they're not going to compete. But look at some of the teams that have been winning the Super Bowl. They have middle of the road defenses, and then they have playmakers on the offense. And so if your offense can just keep up, if your offense can score points and your defense can make 1 or 2 plays a game, you're going to be pretty good. But we have always been thinking that the Bears have to keep everyone under 17 points because the offense is so putrid. And if the Bears don't have the best elite defense in the entire NFL, they're going to suck, which has not been the trend in the last 5-10 years in the NFL whenever everything has been trending towards the offense. You look, Kansas City doesn't have a dominant defense. They can make a play or two, but they also have an incredible offense. And how many we talk about in recent history with these dominant defenses? When was the last time a dominant defense was the Denver. I guess Denver. Denver in 2015, and then maybe you could say Seattle in 2013. But look at the odds now. We're talking about once every 10 years, twice every 10 years. The dominant number 1 defense is the one that wins the Super Bowl. Look what happened with San Francisco. So I think that everyone thinks that if you have a dominant elite defense, that can get you to the Super Bowl. Well, it can sometimes, but what are the odds? What are the odds favoring? The better offense. Yes. So that's why I think that they probably, with all the money they have sunk into the defense, that's a little bit of a problem because they have to start reallocating some of this on the offensive side of the ball.
Let me bring up go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just saying that makes me think of Hogan Johns when Adam Hogue was saying to trade Khalil Mack for Dak because like an NBA style sign and trade. That's what he was saying. Just move on from Mack's contract and then give that money to Prescott.
Yeah, but I don't think the Cowboys would do that. The Cowboys know that they got to re-sign Dak Prescott, and they're going to do it unless they get medicals that say, holy cow, this guy, his injury is so bad that he's not going to come back at the same kind of player that he once was. If they get those medical reports back then. I'm not sure any team should go after him. I wanted to
What
bring.
about Sam Darnold? This is the last time I interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No,
but
no,
what if
that's
the
all right.
Jets, if the Jets are going to draft a quarterback, what if we could get Sam Darnold for, say, a second-round pick?
No.
Ooh.
The guy
Would you
sees
rather have
ghosts.
Sam Darnold than, say, Winston?
Winston doesn't cost you any picks though. He's a free agent,
True,
so
true.
I'd rather take my chances with a guy who's actually thrown for 5,000 yards than the potential of Darnold and then give up a second round pick.
Here,
True. Well, okay.
There is this rumor about, and I just put this up on the screen from Vince. He says, I know that it's up to Watson at the end of the day, but Texas wants a high pick to get a replacement quarterback or a young quarterback back like Tua. We don't have that to give. They want a king's ransom for DeShaun Watson. I agree with Vince. The Bears currently don't have what the Texans are looking for in terms of a draft pick where they could find a replacement for DeShaun Watson or a quarterback that we could include in the deal that they'll say, okay, this is a good bridge quarterback until we find our franchise quarterback. We don't have any of those. Now, the one thing that can happen, and this is a trade rumor started by Sam Barnwell or Bill Barnwell of ESPN, and I know he doesn't have the greatest reputation here at the bar room, but it's a proposal that he threw out. He puts out a 3-way trade proposal that ends up with Tua coming to the Chicago Bears. 22-year-old quarterback who turns 23 in March. He completed 64% of his passes for 1,800 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 11 passing scores, had 5 interceptions. He was sacked 20 times, had 1 fumble. This was his rookie season. It was a rough rookie season. He started about 4 or 5 games in for Fitzpatrick and then played a number of games before being benched again as the Dolphins were battling for a playoff spot, and the head coach thought maybe the veteran could get them in there. So he is saying the Dolphins send a 3rd, a 36th, and 113th picks in 2021, a 2022 first-round pick, and then a 4th-round pick, mid-round 4th-round pick to the Texans, and Tua goes to the Bears. The Texans send Watson, a couple of other guys, and a 3rd-round pick to the Dolphins, and the Bears send their 20th overall pick in 2021, their 22 4th-round pick, and a conditional pick in 2023 to the Dolphins. What do you guys think of a deal sort of like that, where you're bringing in a potential franchise quarterback and the lefty Tua Tagovailoa? I don't know if I got that right, but or do you say no way Tua?
Well, I mean, it comes to, I'm not in the scouting department, but it sounds like that package that you just said for Tua could possibly be used to move up a few spots to get one of those 5 quarterbacks in this draft. So it comes down to whether or not you like Mac Jones or Trey Lance or whoever that you guys perhaps they're in love with in this year's draft, or do you love Tua more than them? So I think I think that can go really either way. I don't like that. I mean, Tua was a rookie, and I didn't really like the 2 quarterback system Miami employed. It worked. They although they didn't go to the playoffs, but they had a successful season by what they thought they were going to have. But I don't know if I've seen enough out of Tua. But then again, he's the only one that's putting the NFL tape out there right now, as opposed to the some of these rookies coming out. So. I know this does not make for good radio that says that I don't know, it would come down to, I would have to talk to the scouting department and say, do you like Mac Jones more than Tua? Do you like Trey Lance more than Tua? Do you like Zach Wilson? Now these guys will be gone before 20, but it's possible that package that you just mentioned in that trade could be used to move up 5 spots or 4 spots to get one of those guys. So if you like one of those rookies more than you like Tua, then you go out and you do that instead and don't worry about it.
I think I would rather have Fitzpatrick than Tua.
Well, there's something to say about that. He's going to come at a low cost, and he's a perfect bridge quarterback. He's done it before. He'll give you a season or 2 of a better than average quarterbacking, and then hopefully you pick up a quarterback in the 1st or 2nd round, and develop that quarterback to be the heir apparent. And it doesn't have to be a quarterback this season. I mean, you can pick up a second or third round quarterback, and hopefully that quarterback shows some promise, but you can also draft another quarterback next season. There's nothing wrong with drafting quarterbacks in back-to-back years. And in fact, if you remember, the Redskins drafted two quarterbacks in one draft. They started
RG3 and Cousins.
There you go.
Really?
And by the way, Cousins
I've
now
got a wet dream for you here, Aldo.
Oh,
Think
okay.
about this real quick. No, seriously, if we're conjuring up hope of DeShaun Watson, there allegedly is a possibility if this man does not accept a pay cut. I'm just throwing another name out there. Not saying this is what I want, and it probably is not plausible, but we're playing the what if game. What if he says, I don't want the pay cut, and because the salary cap is reduced, the Pittsburgh Steelers tell Roethlisberger, thank you for your service. Good luck with your future endeavors. And what about Big Ben?
No.
Oh, his arm has turned into jello. He could not hit anything more than a 3-yard out towards the end of the year. And I've never been a Roethlisberger guy, but that seems like that would be like a Bears move where it's just like, oh, we got a name. It's
exactly.
like when they go out and they get Cordell Stewart or
someone like move, that's for sure. It's like they got Bobby Orr from the Boston Bruins when he was skating on one leg. It's like the greatest hockey player ever, but now he only has one leg, and the Blackhawks have him, and he ended up playing like 40 games in his career with Chicago and had to hang him up. No thank you on Big Ben, but good try.
Didn't Orlando Pace finish his career in Chicago?
Yes, he did in 2009. And the Cordell Stewart thing, the Bears at least did go all in to get Jake Plummer. He ended up picking Denver, and then they settled for Stewart going into the 2003 season because they had to have somebody because Jim Miller was gone. And Chris Chandler was hurt every time he got tackled. Mm-hmm. So they had to have another quarterback. And again, they settled for Cordell, and they drafted Rex that year as well. So.
And it goes to show you that this is kind of a cyclical thing because the Bears try to go all in on somebody and then they have to go with plan B because remember, like last year there was all these questions like, oh, they can go out and get Teddy Bridgewater or they could get Jameis or Andy Dalton, and they were talking about all these guys, and then Nick Foles came in. You're like, oh, okay. And this year we're talking about let's go all in on Watson, and then now it's probably honestly all this Watson trade. I just don't. Although I think that we're in agreement that I just don't think that they're going to have enough to really woo the Texans to get them to send DeShaun Watson to Chicago. So it's going to have to be one of those secondary options. And I know that the Niners say, Jimmy G's in their future, but I think it was just last week that Les Snead said, or I think it was Les Snead who said that Jared Goff as of right now is a Los Angeles Ram. And like 3 days later, he wasn't. So I think that there's a lot of moving pieces there, but I think you're going to end up seeing the Bears go out and say that they like who they get, even though it's not going to be their first. It's not going to be their first choice. They're gonna bring in someone like, and it might not be Garoppolo, but someone like a Garoppolo, and it's just like we like what we like. He has the pedigree. He's we like what he shows, and it's just going to be one of those guys again. That's my biggest fear. It's just going to be just one of those guys again that's holding this placeholder until the next one comes in. We saw it with Glennon. We saw it with Foles. I mean, unfortunately,
better than Glennon. He did take the 49ers to the Super Bowl. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not setting the bar very high to be better than Mike Glennon, but
quarterbacks, Garoppolo is much better if he could just stay healthy than Mike. Yeah. I mean, Mike Glennon is like on a scale of 1 to 10 is like a 1. I mean, Garoppolo may not be.
And they gave him $45 million, and they gave him $18 million for 4 games. Again, horrible move. I agree. You could have just played Jay again the next season, but they wanted to move on from him, so that's what we got. Yeah, so I just don't know what these contracts are going to be like if they actually get like. Does Jimmy G want an extension, or if he gets cut? Because they could cut him and not really. There's no real damage there. So I don't really know what the contract situation would be like that. But although I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the best case scenario, without getting DeShaun Watson, I think right now would be Derek Carr, not David Carr. That poor guy had a hell of a career, but his brother Derek, I think, would be probably the most stabilizing.
And don't forget, Marcus Mariota is available. I say that somewhat facetiously.
No, you know what? I would not be at all surprised if Marcus Mariota and Nick Foles were the 1 and 2 quarterbacks for the Chicago Bears next season. Vince in the chat says, would Green Bay give up Jordan Love if we gave them an intriguing package? Then they make Rodgers happy. That's a fun one to discuss.
I don't think the Bears wouldn't get him from Green Bay would not trade him to us.
Nope.
And they wouldn't even trade Rodgers to the Rams, according to the report. So why would they trade their ace in the hole? At least that's what they interpret him as, their future to, albeit their team that they've bullied for 30 years now. But why would they help us? I don't think they would.
I don't know if I got a feeling that Jordan Love, first of all, his stock rose dramatically at last year's Senior Bowl. Everybody was looking at him. Wow, look at this guy. The way he's built, the way he slings the ball, his accuracy and so forth. He had a great week of practice and stuff. And so all of a sudden he was like a day 2 draft pick, second round, maybe even third round. And all of a sudden he climbed up into the first round and the Packers fell in love with him. But he didn't dress for a single game. Why is that? And not that it mattered because the backup quarterback didn't play at all. But if they wanted somebody to come in and mop up, or if Aaron Rodgers did get hurt, why were they more satisfied with having this other guy? I forgot the other backup's name, as opposed to the so-called heir apparent. Did they just not want to piss off Rodgers and they wanted to keep Jordan Love socially distanced out the door? The Packers now are probably convinced that, Rodgers is going to be here for the rest of his deal, another 3 years. And so Jordan Love could be a potential trade bait. If the Bears want to give us that 20th pick, then we get a nice do-over. Maybe it is possible.
I think that backup you're referring to, I think was Tim Boyle.
He's a Boyle.
Yeah.
Boyle on your ass.
Yeah. I think what you have in Green Bay could potentially be one of those situations they had in New England where they drafted Garoppolo, they drafted Jacoby Percet, and they thought these are going to be the guys that can be the heir apparent when Tom Brady retires. Well, that guy's still playing, they did not anticipate perhaps him playing that long. So I think Rodgers, he's going to want to play. He's going to want to play it out, and he's going to finish it up. But then Jordan Love is going to have to use his entire rookie contract on the bench. And so I get that he could be trade bait, but at least in New England, they got a taste of Garoppolo when Brady was out. They got a taste of Brissett, albeit very small sample size on I think 1 or 2 games. Jacoby Percet got in because Garoppolo got hurt. But remember, Jimmy G was he had a great rating whenever he got his limited play in New England. I don't know how much time Jordan Love is really going to have on the field to put something on the tape where someone says, "Hey, let's go trade for that guy." Because if the asking price is he's a former first rounder, we want at least a second rounder for him or something like that. What team's going to be like, we haven't seen this guy play a snap in the NFL. Why would we give a second rounder? But it only takes one, because I guess if you think a couple years ago, it wasn't at Miami that ended up trading a second rounder for Josh Rosen, and then Fitzpatrick ended up playing the entire year for Miami anyway, and Josh Rosen's now on the practice squad for Tampa Bay. So I guess it only takes one sucker
ring, hypothetically. So
yeah.
I mean, he can win a Super Bowl ring Sunday.
Exactly. So I just that situation is going to be interesting, because you want to see if because I understand Green Bay's mentality where it's like they'd rather have the quarterback in place whenever Rodgers leaves. And can you imagine if Detroit would have taken a quarterback last year, then maybe they have their franchise guy already at quarterback, and they don't need to take on they don't have to take on Jared Goff's contract. They can just trade Matt Stafford for 1 or 2 first round picks, and then they already have their rookie guy in place, and then they have some a lot of extra draft capital. So I get what Green Bay's trying to do as far as keep the quarterback position loaded, and they've had it loaded for the last 30 years or so. But this one, I don't know if it's going to work out the same way that Rodgers and Favre did, just because I think Rodgers could be around long enough to see Jordan Love go to a different team.
Mm-hmm. Lot of debate going on in the chat room regarding who is better, Mitchell Trubisky or Derek Carr. What do you think, Dan?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, Derek Carr a few years ago, before he was injured, was being mentioned as an MVP candidate. I'd love Trubisky, as you know, and I rooted for him. But I have to say Derek Carr is better than Mitchell Trubisky. He's had a better career to this point. He's been in the league longer, obviously. But I would say that Carr is a better player. I would say Carr is an upgrade. I love Mitch. I wish him well. If he ends up with Fangio in Denver, I hope he plays great. I hope they win the AFC West. I want him to succeed somewhere. He seems like a great guy. Mm-hmm. But Derek Carr, yeah, it is David. Yeah, I was afraid I was saying David. Derek Carr is a better player.
Yeah, I want Derek Carr. I just think that he's a more stable. He's not exactly like a going to set the league on fire kind of guy. But the Bears, what have they been asking for the last 30 years? Just stability at the position. And as Dan said, he was an MVP candidate going into what year was that? 2017 or 2016, whatever year that was. And he's shown flashes there. So and just look at the yardage he's thrown for going back to 2015. 3,987, 3,937 the next year, 3,496, then 4,049, 4,054, 4,103. The Bears haven't had that, in case anyone keeps track of statistics. Not big on 4,000-yard passers. In fact, none. So that would be a welcome addition, and it's efficient too, because 27 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And last year 21-8. I know that 19-10 in 2018 wasn't a great ratio, but going back to 2016. He had 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. 2015, 32 touchdowns with 13 interceptions. This is a guy that can actually, run the offense and put a bunch of points on the board. So I would have no problem with that. If they came out of this offseason with Derek Carr, I'm fine with that.
He seems to have a lot more swagger or pizzazz or confidence than Mitchell as well. Mitch is always trying to figure it out. Again, he seems like a great guy, but it's like, he calls Nagy sir, A, because he's probably a gentleman, but B, because he's somewhat intimidated by him, I think, too, by the fact he's the coach. Whereas Derek Carr could come in and be like, hey, man, I've been in the league, 6-7 years already? You can't tell me, you're not going to fucking make me intimidated by you. And I think Foles sort of has that, too, as we saw on the sidelines when he stood up to Nagy, which is something Mitch never seemed to do. So in that regard, I would say that Carr would be a better leader. He wouldn't be like Mitch trying to read books, trying to learn how to read, to be a leader.
It's a question for you, John, from Slim Davis. He wants to know, let's say that the Bears don't get DeShaun Watson. Now there's a hell of a drop-off with whoever you get, Carr, Jimmy G, whoever. My question is, does that qualify as the GM doing his job? Because ownership of the Bears is just giving mad passes for mediocrity for years. So how much would that upset you that the Bears don't acquire a DeShaun Watson or even somebody of that caliber?
No, I think it's a great question, because he's absolutely right. They are given passes for mediocrity, and all you had to do was listen to that stupid press conference at the end of the year saying, collaboration this, and we have, other than winning, we have the culture that all these franchises strive for, and all the other BS lines that we heard there. If you can't, but the one thing that did stick out was saying, they're gonna fix the quarterback position. That's first and foremost. The offseason's all about getting the quarterback position right. So if they can't get Deshaun Watson, which would be, going all in on the quarterback position and fixing it, which, would be doing their job, they have to do something. And so I would agree that, and I said this before, it's just going to be just another one of those guys, just another one of those fallback guys. And I think Carr would be the best out of the situation. But you run that risk of, just bringing in another guy who's going to be that, 1 year placeholder, and and if that's the case, and they go 8-8 and they miss the playoffs next year, then we don't have to worry about whether or not it's considered doing a job, because they won't have jobs. I think that if they miss the playoffs next year, I don't think Pace and Nagy have a job unless they try to be coy about it and draft the quarterback in the first round and then start Foles all year long and be like, hey, you can't fire us yet. We haven't even gotten our shiny new toy that we got in the first round to start as quarterback. You got to give us one more year with that. So unless they want to play some, mental gymnastics with everybody and draft a quarterback early and say, hey, we need at least 2 years for this guy. You can't can us yet. I think that they're on a basically a playoff mandate unless they try to pull that. And I don't know if ownership will go for it.
Dan, the other big thing that I keep seeing on social media, and I've been seeing it now for over a year, is the importance of rebuilding the offensive line. And when we look back at the two previous Super Bowl teams, the 85 Bears and the 2006 Bears, they had pretty good offensive lines. The 85 Bears, I think, was far superior to the 2006, but nonetheless, those offensive lines were good. How much of an onus, how would you characterize the current Chicago Bears offensive line, and how much of an onus do you think Ryan Pace should put on acquiring offensive linemen in the draft and maybe even free agency?
Large. It is a problem. And if you look at the 06 team specifically, you had Olin Kreutz at center, but they signed John Tate from Kansas City, got Reuben Brown from Buffalo, Roberto Garza from Atlanta. So they got pieces from other teams via free agency, and those pieces fit well. I mean, they were a cohesive unit that, again, helped Thomas Jones amass large yardage and get to the Super Bowl. So it can be a quick fix in that regard if you can sign the right people. And like I told you at the 20th, assuming that those quarterbacks are gone, the 5 that you all were speaking of. I don't watch college football, as you know, and I'm certainly not the expert to talk about the Senior Bowl. But if you're the 20th pick and the quarterback's not available, I thoroughly advocate, a left tackle, right tackle, what have you, with the 20th pick in the draft and going offensive line in the first round. You can get somebody. It doesn't have to be Gabe Carimi or Chris Williams. You can make the right pick and get someone that's there for the next 5-6 years,
Whoa. Gabe Carimi.
What about
Chris Williams had an injured back when they drafted him.
Yeah, and then he went, but he did go on to have a fairly decent, not a great career, but an average career with the Cowboys, didn't he?
Well, did he? I don't remember. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Didn't he get traded to the Rams or picked up by the Rams or something?
I'll research that.
I think you're talking about the guy that got hurt. That was our draft pick in 2002.
Okay.
He ended up the guy that got hurt at Champaign and eventually went to Dallas and played well there. What was that guy's name?
Yeah, Chris Williams ended up he played for the Bears from 2008 to 2012, and then from 2012 to 2013 played for the Rams, and then had one farewell tour with the Bills in 2014, and then was out of football.
That's him. That's who I was.
that's the guy. Yeah, and Gabe Carimi wasn't
Colombo.
Mark Colombo.
Oh, he went on the podium.
He was drafted in the first round, got hurt with us, and did well with Dallas afterwards.
Yes, that is true. What do you think, John? Thank you, Michael Salerno. He said Colombo as well. What do you think about the Bears' offensive line? How bad is it right now, and how much of an emphasis should Ryan Pace place on acquiring new players this offseason that play the offensive line?
I think certainly at the tackle position, because I think what you're going to see is Bobby Massey is going to get released. He seems to be like the easiest cap casualty to go off of. I think they save about $5 million or maybe a little more with him. It's going to be hard to cut Leno just because what you cut is not as much as what you you don't save as much just given what his contract is. Plus, you don't want to cut both your starting tackles and just hope that you can fill that in either. But I think if you look at the interior part of this line, they found something in Sam Mustipher that seems to work pretty well. Now the jury is out on him. He has his critics, but I think once they put him in there, that was their best formula formula. And then you're going to get James Daniels back, and obviously you can put Cody Whitehair at the other guard position, and then you have Alex Bars as potentially that swing guard. So you actually might have some depth at the interior part of this line. So with Mustipher, Whitehair, and Daniels there, with Bars as your depth, you might have the interior part of this line figured out. Now you might need to go put an emphasis maybe in the second round at tackle, or if you're going to stay put at 20 and you're not going to move up and get a quarterback, hope maybe that one of those tackles or someone that you are pretty high on, you can get at number 20 as your new left tackle, or maybe if it comes down to it, you trade back. I know that the Bears usually are pretty aggressive in the draft, but has anyone thought they could potentially trade back and get some more draft capital and then get a good lineman at the beginning or middle of the second round, and then have another second round pick or potentially a first rounder next year? So I think that's something that they do need to address, because they're going to be without at least one. And then maybe you can bring back like Jermaine Ifedi on another 1 year deal to maybe provide some depth. He's obviously familiar with the system now, but I don't know if he's going to be your long-term solution there. They brought him in to play guard. He ended up getting kicked out to tackle. Played okay at right tackle, so he could potentially be some depth at tackle and as an emergency guard as well, since he's played both positions. But I really think they should address that tackle position early on in the draft.
The good thing about this upcoming draft is that it's deep with offensive linemen. So you're going to find starters as late as the third round and guys who could potentially be battling for starting jobs in the fourth round. So that's really good news. So if you address the quarterback position in round one, and maybe one of those five, it's not going to be the top 3 or 4, but maybe Mac Jones falls to 20, or maybe you just have to, you can just trade a third rounder to move up a couple slots to get a Mac Jones. Then you can focus in the second round, getting an offensive tackle, the heir apparent to Charles Leno, have him play at the right tackle position for a year, and then move him over to the left tackle position. There are guys out there in this upcoming draft who fill that bill. And like you were saying, John, the interior of this offensive line now has depth. It's like, whoa, what happened? At the middle of the season, and we thought it was one of the worst things, and yet they have kind of proven, because Sam Mustipher, God bless him, has proven that he could play center in this league. He's still not a top-notch center, but he played well against bad teams. He can play better against good teams with another year under his belt, having Camp with behind them. We've got depth at that left guard position, and whoever doesn't win that job can learn how to be the swing guard position, and maybe even trade Cody Whitehair. Now, I think his contract makes it difficult for a trade in 2021, but maybe looking at the 2022 season when it's much more advantageous to trade him, and because now we do have some depth in that interior of the line. So I'm not as worried. Like, there was somebody who put up on Twitter today, in the first round we should draft an offensive lineman, a second round offensive lineman, third round offensive line. I don't see it as that dire. And there are some pretty decent free agent offensive linemen coming up. There's Brandon Scherr from the Washington team, Joe Tooney from the Patriots, Trent Williams, 49ers, Corey Linsley, interior guy, Alex Mack. Down at in the middle of this list, Cameron Irving, who played left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys this past season when their regular left tackle, Tyron Smith, got injured. He would be a great guy to bring in for depth, and maybe even have him compete with Charles Leno for that left tackle job. So I'm not as concerned about the offensive line as long as it's addressed. It has to be addressed, as opposed to what Nagy has not done as well as we'd like him to do. But this is a great year to build the offensive line, because there's a lot of options available. All right.
Yeah. And I was going to say, once they figured out that Rashad Coward was not the answer, they were able to truly put some things together, and that's why. And this is just why my overall sentiment of this whole offseason, why I was so upset at that press conference, was some of these questions that were being asked of Ryan Pace and George McCaskey and Ted Phillips and Matt Nagy. It just seems like they were taken aback, like they were going to be asking those questions. And I said before the season ended, I said, if depending on what they do with the GM and the head coach, if they decide to keep them, or they're going through this thought process of whether or not they need to keep the GM and the head coach, there has to be some difficult questions and there has to be some difficult answers. So someone needed to sit down Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy and say, hey, Matt, why did it take you so long to figure out the offensive line? Why did you stick with Rashard Coward so long? Hey, Ryan, why haven't you invested in the line as much as we would like you to have? Hey, Matt, why were you so quick to get to push Mitch Trubisky away and then put in Nick Foles? And then why were you so hesitant to put Mitch back in when it clearly wasn't working with Foles? Hey, Matt, why did it take you so long to give up play calling? And what is this that I hear that maybe you had a little more influence towards the end of the year whenever the offense started to sputter again? None of these, I don't know if any of these questions were being asked because they seemed like they were taken aback at the press conference. And so what really irritates me is I don't know if any of these questions were asked. I don't know if any of these things were actually thought through or talked about or collaborated on, which seems to be the magic word. But it frustrates me because before any of this happened, I was hoping that they would come out with a united front and say, we screwed this up. This is what we're going to do. We screwed this up. And then whenever they were asked, it was just like, oh, wow. I mean, we have confidence and we have a culture and, we have a lot of great guys here and we like the leadership and just things that you could get out of a cliche book. And that's why I was just kind of upset about this, because it didn't seem like any of those tough questions were asked of the GM or the head coach after the season.
Dan, do you feel that way too about the tough questions asked of the leadership?
I don't want to disagree with John, just to disagree. No, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything disingenuously. I thought that the press did okay that day. There were I would have liked to have heard the question that John formulated there about Nagy's play calling. Well, you're supposedly in on the play calling again. Oh yeah, and guess what? The Green Bay game, New Orleans game, it looked like you were calling the plays again. And guess what? You weren't scoring suddenly. I'd like to hear that as well. But for the most part, I thought that they were. I don't want to say tough, but
no, I'm not criticizing the press. I think the press did a great job. I'm mad at the preparedness of the GM and the owner and the head coach and the team president, because they didn't seem like they had the answers, or they hadn't even talked about this. I'm mad because I wanted those questions to be asked before they decided to keep the GM and before they decided to keep the head coach. Why weren't those questions and why weren't those subjects brought up in their end of the year meeting before the press conference? I think the press did a great job. I think they grilled them, and I even tweeted out during the press conference, I thought the Chicago media was doing a great job. My anger was pointed at the front office because it just seemed like, didn't you guys even talk about this before this press conference? And that's where my anger came from.
I didn't mean to mischaracterize you there. Then I agree. I can't be in George's mind, obviously, but it felt like he knew that the decision wasn't popular, and for whatever reason, they went with that decision. Maybe it was money. I can't speculate for certain. No one's going to know that except George. But in my opinion, the day of the press conference, he was like, we just got to get through this somehow. We've made the decision. I know everybody cares. Everybody wants to win. I want to win, but this is the way we're going. And I don't really have a good answer to justify it, maybe other than intuition, maybe money. But I think he took his lumps the best he could. He went on both radio stations. He went on the Score. He went on ESPN. Most people say he made things worse by doing so, but give him credit, man. He did answer all questions. He was polite. He didn't necessarily speak in platitudes the way Brian Pace does. He kind of sounds like Pete Buttigieg when he just says shit that just, he sounds like a politician. So I think George did the best he could because he knew that his answer of not firing these guys was unpopular. But that for whatever reason, that's the decision they made. But he knows that everyone thinks it's a terrible decision. He knows that.
Go ahead, Aldo. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've asked people for some questions here because I know, Dan, you got to leave in about 15 minutes or 10 minutes.
Yeah, because I got a snow to drive through too, which is going to make it harder for me to get to work. So 10 minutes max.
All right. Well, we'll get to John. Can you stick around another half hour?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. So what we'll do is we'll get to some of these questions after Dan leaves. And what I want to ask Dan, and then John, you can chime in. When that 2006 Bears team, that the Lovie Smith team, where Rex Grossman went to the Super Bowl and so forth, anything from that season and building that season that you think that the present regime of the Chicago Bears could learn from and say, well, maybe we should do a little bit about what Jerry Angelo and Lovie Smith did that season to get us back to the Super Bowl? Or do you think that this is just a new era of football and that the circumstances are different? There isn't anything that we could have learned from that 2006 Chicago Bears team that ended up playing in the 2007 Super Bowl?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say that you can't learn something from it. The cover two certainly is dead, even with the personnel. I mean, it's just not going to work in today's game. You see, anytime the Bears play soft, and we're not even exactly in the cover two shell the way Lovie would have us, they get eaten alive by Aaron Rodgers. The way Aaron Rodgers gets beaten is what happened in the NFC Championship when you fucking hit him. And the Bears can never hit anybody. They couldn't even hit Phillip Rivers, and he couldn't move last season. From the 06 team, to answer your question, I think you can sign some guys. Hypothetically, it proves that you can rebuild your line somewhat quickly if you make the right decisions. Furthermore, that year they drafted Kyle Orton in the 4th round. I was never his biggest fan, but at least you had him there as an option when Rex goes down and you decide to cut Chad Hutchinson in the preseason. So when Rex gets hurt in St. Louis at the TWA Dome, whatever it was being called in 05, against the Rams, again, you had another guy you could stick in Kyle Orton. Like if it were Nick Foles starting opening day, and let's say the Bears didn't draft a quarterback, which would be disastrous, but let's say that didn't happen, you couldn't stick Tyler Bray in there to be like, well, we can learn from this guy the rest of the season, see what he has. So the 05 team did the best they could with a young quarterback that had never played before. And he helped lead the team to a division, even though Rex won the division clinching game in Green Bay on Christmas, and helped mop up the Falcon game. But still, Kyle deserves a lot of credit for that. To answer your question, you can help rebuild your offense the way that team did, and perhaps get back to running the ball a little bit as well. But I fear that Nagy, because Mitch helped save his job, is now just going to feel emboldened to go back to trying to be Kansas City again when you don't have the personnel to do it. It's baffling that he just continues to do it. But he said, I wasn't brought here to run the I formation. So he just continually tries to run a system that doesn't behoove him because he doesn't have the players to plug in that system. I always bring up the Pat Riley analogy. When he went to the Knicks, he was not running Showtime anymore. But he could have easily said, look, guys, I've won, 5 NBA championships with the fucking Lakers. This is my system. It works. But he didn't have magic with the Knicks, so he didn't try to do that shit. He's like, I've got muscle. I've got Charles Oakley. I've got Patrick Ewing. We're going to kick your ass, and we're going to play good defense. So the Pat Riley analogy is to say that you have to be able to devise a scheme based upon the personnel that you have on your roster, which our GM and our coach seem to fail to do so every year.
John, any thoughts on that last Super Bowl team and things that we could probably incorporate with the present day Bears?
There's a few parallels, or there's a few things that you can pick and say that would work. But let's not forget that we're going on. This is being 15 years ago now. So I would like to say that the run game that they implored would be effective. They had Thomas Jones and Cedric Benson on that team as a good 1-2 punch. I think they can have that with a David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen, or maybe they draft a guy or bring in a veteran. And I think the Cordero Patterson at running back thing has maybe ran its course. But then again, it's Matt Nagy, so who knows? And then you see parallels between 2006 and 2018. What was a big calling card for both of those teams? The defense with takeaways. You remember the game against Arizona in 2006 on Monday night, the Denny Green game, where they were able to turn the ball over like crazy on defense. You actually felt more confident when the defense was on the field than you did the offense. And then in 2018, we saw turnovers galore, whether it be Khalil Mack or Eddie Jackson or what have you. So you had an opportunistic defense. But but that kind of runs into what one of my points was a while ago, that isn't as sustainable to have a defense that is constantly turning over the other team and giving your offense a short field to play on. That's great, and that's fun to watch. And honestly, those defenses were just incredible. But obviously, they didn't have long sustaining success, because in 2019 the turnovers went down and the offense went down. Eventually, after the Bears went to the Super Bowl and lost, the turnovers kind of went down and the offense went down. So there's, as far as what you can bring over, I mean, you can bring that toughness, you can bring that we're going to try to run the ball and control the clock kind of thing. But it's just such a different game from 2006 than it is now, that and like Dan said, some of those defensive alignments aren't going to work anymore either. But it's just too different to say, hey, let's rebuild the 2016 and we're going to be fine.
Well, if I could make another point, and I got to get out of here, comparing 06 to what he was just saying, the parallel would be, unfortunately for that run, Mike Brown couldn't stay healthy. And then suddenly your dominant safety, the playmaker back there, he isn't there. And for whatever reason, after he got paid, it seems like Eddie Jackson's not there. But maybe you put him back, get him out of the box, make him the deep safety potentially. But another parallel is that Mark Anderson had a solid rookie year in 2006. I think he had 10 sacks and then didn't do shit ever again. So it's kind of the same thing with us. You don't necessarily have to be the top 5 Bears defense or top 5 in the league or even top 10. If you could just get something, I know I'm going to be vilified for it, but if you can get Khalil Mack to fucking play like Khalil Mack again. I mean, the guy has had 2 lackluster seasons. I don't care what anybody says. $141 million contract does not warrant. We thought we were trading for Lawrence Taylor, and we just got another guy who's underachieving. He's Julius Peppers. He comes to Chicago and doesn't do shit. He hasn't done anything the last 2 seasons. And I give him credit for answering the bell and playing when he's had an assortment of ailments each Sunday. But again, I think if you could get Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn just to play like composites of the way they've played before, if you could just get both guys to be somewhere around 10 sacks, that and have Jackson just have a few interceptions and maybe get a little bit better corner play, then potentially your defense is going to improve mightily from where they were. Plus, if you've got Chuck gone, and hopefully this new guy isn't a yes man, even though he's not new per se, he's been with the Bears since Trestman. But the DeShaun guy, DeShaun Desai? Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Hopefully he can instill pass rush or something. I can't tangibly point to it. I can just vaguely call it the scheme. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's the players or Chuck Pagano, but they had no pass rush. And that hurt the 07 Bears as well. And an inability to get interceptions without Mike Brown, and Mark Anderson suddenly just shut down after one season. And you also would lose Bernard Berry into the Vikings. And a lot of people didn't like Berry and they thought he was overrated, but he was our deep guy. So you take away your offensive weapon, your deep guy, you trade Thomas Jones, and Benson isn't a hit. He's not the guy that you thought you had. So there you go. The 07 team doesn't make the playoffs. The 08 team doesn't make the playoffs. The 09 team doesn't make the playoffs. So by then you have to make the Cutler trade to desperately do something to hold on to the end of the Briggs, Urlacher, Tillman era to capitalize on it. So, I mean, there are some parallels is my point, but unfortunately I got to go. John, it was great to talk with you.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we can do a Monday show again and have us a marathon.
You got it, brother.
Great talking to you, Dan.
Yes, sir. Be well. You all take care. Thank you. Have a good night.
Drive safely.
You too.
Yes, sir. Be well.
John, Slim Davis has a couple of questions. He wanted to get Dan's opinion on it, but Dan is now gone, so I'll ask you. Regarding the Texans, so what do you do if you're the owner of the Texans or the GM? What do you do now in terms of DeShaun Watson? And he goes on to say the question, what do you do? Do you play hardball and make the situation worse with DeShaun Watson, or do you swallow your pride and make a deal?
Well, I think they're already playing hardball. It's because the head coach and the GM basically say they have absolutely no intentions of trading DeShaun Watson, and they referred to him as the player, which I didn't necessarily like, but they said that they have no intentions of trading him. Now, that can have a number of meanings. One, they really don't intend on trading him, and they would rather him try to make a power move and sit out the season than them giving in and trading him, or they're trying to drive up his trade value. And they say, we have absolutely no intention of trading him, and it's going to take, you're going to have to move heaven and earth to make a deal to get us to go move off of our franchise guy. Obviously, he wants out, but the Texans can basically be like, okay, sit out unless he wants to, pull a Le'Veon Bell and kind of not get paid. And I think the new CBA kind of, I mean, it doesn't work out for the players to sit out anymore.
Right.
Unless he's gonna, and that's a PR nightmare. I mean, then if you're looking at it from a PR standpoint, what free agent's going to say, hey, I want to go to Houston? That looks like a fun time where they treat their players like crap and then they make them sit out the entire season rather than trade them away. So it's a very delicate situation on both sides where Watson right now, he can say, I'm not playing, so trade me. And he can do that all the way up to August and September until the game checks have to start being cashed. So I honestly look for them to eventually trade him. I think that they don't want to because they know how hard it is to get a franchise player, or a franchise quarterback. But you don't want a guy that basically says, I don't want to be here. And then when does that really ever, at least in the NFL, when does that ever turn out well, where it's just like, okay, we came to agreement, he's going to stick around here for the next 10 years. I don't see that happening. So I think eventually it would be best for both sides for them to trade him. If he truly wants out of there and he's not happy with the culture there, he's not happy with the front office there, he's not happy with the decisions that the franchise has made, let him go, because all you're going to do is ruin your reputation for future players. And they're saying, I'm not going to Houston, or, oh crap, I'm getting drafted by Houston. Look what they did to DeShaun Watson. And he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. Look how they treated him. What are they going to do with me? I'm a lineman. How are they going to treat me? I think that you see him eventually get traded. And once again, I don't think it's going to be to the Bears just because they don't have enough to offer. But I think that they go out and he brings in a treasure trove of picks and players.
Yeah, I think, clearly the Texans hired this new head coach, David Culley, because of the friendship that he and DeShaun Watson had at the Pro Bowl last year. Apparently they hung out together. They were very friendly. They walked away with a lot of respect for one another. Watson spoke highly of him. So they brought him on to try to placate Watson. And the issue though is that apparently, and this according to Adam Schefter, he's still not answering the phone calls from so I don't think it's placated him at all. So unless things simmer down a little bit, then they are going to be forced to trade him or just say, all right, DeShaun, you're just going to have to sit. And that could get real ugly for all the reasons that you just mentioned. So I think that over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I have a gut feel that DeShaun Watson is going to start to kind of chill a little bit and say, okay, I'm going to take the calls. And the new Texans head coach is David Culley is going to say, hey, don't you remember when we had a beer at the Pro Bowl game? We got along. Let's bring this franchise back, man. Don't worry about the chaplain and the crap that he's talking about. Don't worry about those false promises. I think they're going to make this last ditch effort to win his heart. And based on the interviews that I've seen with David Culley, I think he could do it. He sounds like a really earnest, authentic guy. He's getting his first shot at being a head coach. I think DeShaun is going to look at him and say, okay, brother, let's give this. But I'll tell you this, if this team pisses me off again, I'm going to do my thing and just walk away. I don't care about the money, blah, blah, blah. So I think that perhaps is how that scenario is going to play out. I don't think Watson's going to go anywhere. I really don't.
Well, I do know just because I talked to a reporter who used to cover the Philadelphia Eagles and saying that whenever Terrell Owens was going through his contract situation in 2005 with the Philadelphia Eagles, the only coach that Terrell Owens would talk to was David Culley. He was the only one he would talk to. So he does have a reputation of being able to connect with players, being able to, have that to build that trust with players. And maybe that's something that the Houston Texans saw and thought maybe he can mend this relationship with DeShaun Watson. And just a side note, remember when we were talking about this before the end of the season, before all of this drama started, how the Houston Texans was basically one of the best jobs that a coach could have, and then it just turned into, what the hell is this? This team is so dysfunctional. Their star quarterback wants out, and so a guy that we didn't even have on the radar becomes their head coach. I'm not sure that he was their number 1, 2, 3, or 4 choice, but he's there now. But I don't know. I think that now we've seen the whole social media thing. We've seen players do this before. Didn't Jordan Howard take away all of his Bear stuff off Instagram one year? Yeah. So we see players do this with their social medias. Yeah. So like we see players like make these stances, and we remember when Kobe wanted out of the Los Angeles and he was going to get traded no matter what, and he didn't. So but we have also seen times where it's just like, oh, they ain't trading that guy. Kind of like Khalil Mack. I didn't think in a million years the Raiders were going to trade away Khalil Mack, and they did. Right. I mean, I think if a guy is disgruntled enough, and it comes down to whether or not like I said, it really comes down to DeShaun Watson. If he says, I don't want to be with this team, I don't care who the head coach is, I don't care who's making the decisions, I don't care what the culture is going to be, I want out of here, I think they're going to have to eventually do that. Because you can't have your quarterback, your star quarterback, being around the rest of the team or refusing to be around the team. And you say, where's our leader? Oh, he hates the franchise. Oh, why? And then it's gonna start, leaking out to other players. So I think if he's dead set on leaving, he will get traded. Now there's a possibility he could be playing hardball himself and just saying, hey, I'm serious, fix this or I'm out. So, but I'm leaning more towards him being traded, but I can see why you think that he wouldn't be.
Yeah. All right, let's tackle some of these questions. We got Way Marie coming in and saying, at some point, can you describe what you think the relationship between Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy is, given what has transpired with Mitch over the last few years? And then in a subsequent post, she says, wouldn't you say that Nagy has made Pace look bad? Yeah, I think so. I think he's basically said, yeah, the quarterback you chose is really not a very good quarterback.
That's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. Is Nagy making Pace look bad, or Pace looking Nagy look bad?
Very good point. But I do think that they have shaked hands and says, hey, we're in this together. Pace has said, I'm confident we're going to get the quarterback position correctly because I got Matt now helping me make that decision. So given that he publicly stated that, and that his contract is now tied to Matt Nagy's. I think one of the reasons that they did not reveal how many years Ryan Pace had on his contract. Yeah, very bizarre. I think it's because they did give him a secret extension to coincide with Nagy's contract. And I think those guys are tied at the hip, and they've kind of vowed, you don't push me in front of the train, I won't push you. So I think that there is that. But clearly, the way Nagy treated Mitchell Trubisky was an indirect, slap in the face to Ryan Pace. He basically, it took him so long to tailor the offense to what Mitchell Trubisky could do. He ignored what Mitchell Trubisky wanted to do with this offense, and that's just not good. If I'm Ryan Pace, I would have had it out with Matt Nagy a long time ago. I know I didn't bring you in here to run the eye, but if that's what works better for this quarterback, then run the goddamn eye. Excuse my language. So I think there is that going on.
Yeah, and all of these problems kind of feed into each other. So obviously Matt Nagy did not have a hand in choosing Mitch Trubisky. He was still in Kansas City when Ryan Pace decided that Mitch Trubisky was going to be the franchise quarterback. And then Matt Nagy comes in here and he's going to be the offensive genius. He's going to revolutionize offense in Chicago. And he all of a sudden, the guy they have and the guy that Ryan Pace wants to be the franchise quarterback for the next 15 years can't run Matt Nagy's system. And I think Matt Nagy has been a coach that says the players must adapt to the system. My system is not going to adapt to the players. And we've seen that stubbornness throughout everything, whether it's the play calling or the production of the players. It's just, this is my system. You better find a way to run it. And so it kind of, all these problems play into each other. And you can't tell me that Matt Nagy didn't have a hand in last offseason saying, oh, we need Nick Foles. Like, because they were going to bring somebody in, and I'm sure Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace both sat down and said, all right, Matt, who can run your offense? Well, you know who I think can run my offense? Nick Foles. Okay, let's go trade a 4th-round pick for him instead of signing a free agent. So they go out and they trade for Nick Foles, and he can't do anything either, and the system looks awful. We're running out of excuses for this system. It was Mitch. It was Foles. It was offensive line. It was the tight ends. They fixed the tight end. They fixed the offensive line it improved. They put Foles in, like Matt Nagy said, and they still couldn't do anything until they kind of dumbed down the offense. I don't want to say dumbed down. They simplified the offense, and they did things that Mitch Trubisky could do. They went out of play action. They let him throw on the run a little bit. They ran the ball out of the eye. But I don't think Matt Nagy likes that. Now that he got another vote of confidence, he gets to give another crack at it, and he gets to probably have a new quarterback, and we're not going to see that offense that we saw put up 30-some points 3 weeks in a row. We're going to see Matt Nagy's offense. He's going to have his quarterback that he had a hand in choosing, and now we're going to see what this offense can really cook with, and we might just see another really lackluster performance.
And I think she has a follow-up saying, do you think that Nagy gets fired at the end of the season if things don't go well? I think the answer to that is how badly. How badly do things go bad? And that will determine. Also, what will determine is if they draft a young quarterback. If they draft a young quarterback, that buys them that second year left in their contract. They can go to management and say, hey, we're on the right track here. We drafted Mac Jones. He looked promising in his first year. Just give him 2 years, and we should be back into getting into the playoffs. That could potentially play out. Now, I want to tackle this question from Ravi. If Eddie Jackson played like shit under Desai as his position coach, will he play shittier now that Desai is the defensive coordinator? What do you say about that?
I think there's a lot of nuances to this, and I can understand the concern, but I also think that you're going to see a change in scheme as well. From what I understand, Desai is going to try to go back to a lot of what Vic Fangio was doing. Now, I don't know the intricacies of the Vic Fangio defense, but I do know that it looked a lot different than the Chuck Pagano defense at times. So I think Desai, if he is going to, he gets to implement. He didn't really get to implement a scheme. That was Chuck Pagano. All he could do was really, be the positions coach and try to get his guys ready. But if he's able to really have his hand in the scheme, and he saw what Eddie Jackson could do with Vic Fangio, and he's more inclined to run a Vic Fangio defense, maybe that's going to get the players in the right position.
Yep. Sorry about that audio that just popped up on one of my screens. I agree with that. And here's, like you said, there is a lot of nuance involved here. Sean Desai had his best time, his best results when he was working with Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator. I think it became apparent that Chuck Pagano came in here and he didn't have the innovation that Fangio did. He didn't have mastery over the play calling like Fangio did. And so that the hope now is that Sean Desai will be able to implement his own ideas, and that his own ideas mirror more of what Vic Fangio is doing. So I have a lot of hope that Sean Desai is one of the, if Vic Fangio wanted Desai to go with him to Denver, and the Bears blocked that because they thought that he was a promising young coach. So I'm glad that they've promoted him if indeed he is as promising as they believe that he is. I like the idea they've got a new thinker in there. They've got a guy who's got, but also has that experience with these particular players to get more out of them. And frankly, he's on a 1-year deal. I mean, I don't know what the contract is that he signed as a defensive coordinator, but it really is a 1-year deal. If we don't get immediate results out of Eddie Jackson and the entire defense, then Sean Desai, Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace, none of them are going to be around.
No.
We're going to see improved play. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I like that they hired from within because we saw what they had in Brandon Staley. They let him go, and now all of a sudden he's a head coach. So I like the idea of having a new thinker, a new age thinker, a guy that has never done it before and might have a different way of thinking or a different way of scheming or a different way of getting players in place. Look at what happens on the offensive side of the ball. Guys who anything that's innovative or anyone who even knows Sean McVay gets a head coaching consideration, and it's like this new cutting edge and how it's going to take the league by storm. I think on the defensive side of the ball, people are a little more. They're a little more. They back off that. They prefer the retreads. Go get a guy who was a head coach. Go get a Chuck Pagano. Go get some guy who. Go get a Todd Bowles. Not to say Todd Bowles hasn't done a great job, but I'm just using that as an example. Go get these guys that were head coaches and then bring them back down as coordinators. Whereas you see quarterback coaches who were in the Sean McVay tree, or quarterback coaches that were with Frank Reich or anyone else are getting head coaching consideration because they might have a new way of thinking and connecting with the players. Why not try that with defense? Why not try that with the defensive side of the ball? And I think that's what they're going to try to do with Sean Desai here.
I'm with you. Let's see. R. Bickham wants to know some of the offensive linemen who could be available in the first round and top guys in the third or fourth round. Well, again, like I said earlier in the show, I hope that they don't target a offensive lineman in the first round because there's all this depth in the middle of the rounds, and some of the guys in those middle rounds that could fall into the second round, third round. Guys that we should be paying attention to are from Alabama, Alex Leatherwood, who at the Senior Bowl looked really good at that left tackle position. There's Landon Dickerson for an interior lineman. There's Liam Eichenberg, who played left tackle at Notre Dame. He's another guy that I would love to see in the second round come to the Chicago Bears. Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski aren't as high on Tevin Jenkins as I am from the tape that I've seen. I like him. And in fact, I've seen him selected in some mock drafts to the Bears in the first round, but I think it's much more likely he's going to be there available in the second round. I think he would be good value. So there's tons of guys out there to look at. And so I will suggest to our Bickham is to follow our Thursday show. We're not on this Thursday, but we come back next Thursday and we talk about the draft in depth. Totally in depth, and we'll get you lots of opinions on who could be a potential second, third round pick for that offensive line. John, I wanted to ask you regarding the Senior Bowl. You talked before the game about Kellen Mond and your like for him. What did you see out of quarterback Kellen Mond at the Senior Bowl? And do you think that he could be a quarterback who right now looks like he could be a day 2, maybe even an early day 3 pick, but perhaps his performance in the Senior Bowl has pushed him up into the early second round?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I thought he could be maybe a steal on day 2, maybe in the third round. And he obviously his performance at the Senior Bowl is probably gonna skyrocket that a little bit because we've seen guys' stock go up a ton just from their performance at the Senior Bowl sometimes, especially at the quarterback position. And I see a guy that continues to get better. I mean, the knock on him, and Danny Shimon kind of broke this down a little bit, but just the inconsistency. But if you watch him play, you see that playmaking ability. You can see that he's obviously a dual threat. I think in high school, at one game, he ran the ball 30 times and like threw it 30 times or something like that. Like he was the offense. So, he has been working on his leadership abilities as far as being vocal, having a command of the offense. And he's a guy that I don't think that would be a day one starter, but if you're going to have that bridge guy, if the Bears decide they're going to invest in the line or they're going to invest in something early on in round one, maybe you do go out and get a Kellen Mond who could be a great value, and then he learns from Nick Foles, or he has that guy in front of him, and then he could potentially turn into a starter. I think that his stock is rising now. If it rises into the first round, or it's a fringe high second rounder, I don't know if I would take it. And that's why I always fall in love with these guys that are like second, third, fourth round value. And then when all of a sudden they start gaining some traction, it's just like, oh crap. Now I don't want them to really take him. Just like I loved Lonnie Johnson a couple years ago, the cornerback who now plays, I think, for Houston. I loved that guy. And then I thought that he was going to be a steal in like in the late rounds. And then he went a lot higher than I thought he was going to. So like, crap, he's not the steal that I thought he was anymore. But I really like what Kellen Mond is doing, and I think that if he continues to progress, he's one of those guys that's like real high ceiling, but you also get a little afraid of that as well because you're not sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wasn't paying that much attention to him during the season. And now lately I have been, especially after his performance at the Senior Bowl. And you can't fault a quarterback who in the first half of the Senior Bowl game is not going to play well. There's a new offensive line. You're playing now against a defense that's flying around and trying to impress scouts. But he made the necessary adjustments to get out there in the second half and make game-winning throws, make game-winning type plays and so forth. I thought he played really well. And I think the next big step for the Chicago Bears, if they have any interest in him, is to go out there to that pro day, that scout day, and have a good interview with him. Find out, if this guy is as legit as he sounded in the TV interviews, and maybe take a flyer on him. Maybe he is a guy that if you're in the second round and he's still available, and you think that perhaps he's going to go in the top 10 picks of the second round, maybe you move up a little bit. But I'm intrigued by him. I'm going to go back and watch some more tape on him and see what some of his successes and failures were this past season. But he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Let me find another question for us. Robert Quinn, or excuse me, Khalil Mack or Julius Peppers? Who'd you like better?
Oh, wow.
Tough one, right?
Yeah, it really is. And, they different generations. And I was obviously, I think I was more like my early teens when Julius Pepper really caught on. So he was just like this freak. And, he's a former basketball player. And you just feel like this guy could do anything. He had the height, he had the speed, he had the strength. He just, and when he went to the Chicago Bears, I was like, I cannot believe this guy is coming to my favorite team, because I just loved watching him in general. I did like watching Khalil Mack, but I probably just didn't as much, just because it's a West Coast team, wasn't on TV a lot. If it was later on in the day, and so I grew up on the East Coast, so I grew up watching Julius Peppers a lot more. And if you're going to give me prime Peppers or prime Mack, I'd probably take prime Peppers.
Mm-hmm.
I could be in the minority there, but I just an athletic freak, and also I think that the signing of Julius Peppers put to rest the cheap Bears tag that was always on them. Like the Bears won't spend any money for free agency. They did. They wanted Julius Peppers, and that. Now I'm not saying they spend the money correctly, but they certainly shed that tag of being the same old cheap Bears. That was gone after that.
Yeah, just to be clear, every team in the NFL has to spend 87% of their salary cap. What if they spend 90% of it, then that 10% they can roll over into the next year. But within every 4 years, they got to spend close to 100% of all the cap dollars available. If not, they get fined. So even if they wanted to be cheap with payroll, they couldn't. Now you can say, well, they're cheap with some of the other things, like the parking problems around Soldier Field or whatever. But in terms of player payroll, they're not cheap. Vinny has this question. Why did Nagy care about getting David Montgomery? Because he doesn't care about a running game. Plus, what the hell did Riley really do or didn't do to be in the doghouse? Pace really seems excited by him. Go ahead, you tackle this one.
Yeah, I wish I could. I think that this kind of just plays into the same thing we were talking about before, where even though, I think that Nagy and Pace probably have a good relationship, there sometimes is a disconnect on why players are brought in or how players should be used. I think Ryan Pace loved David Montgomery, and that's why they traded up to get him. And maybe during some of their conversations, this is purely just like speculation. I have no idea what their internal conversations are, but maybe Pace is like, I love this guy. It is going to be a great weapon. And Nagy's like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, go up and get him. Another offensive weapon. Great. And then Nagy runs the ball 5 times in a game or 9 times 5 times and a half or something like that. So I just feel like sometimes the GM might have a different plan than the head coach, and that's where you see some of that disconnect. As far as Riley Ridley go, that's a huge mystery that I don't know if anyone's ever going to know unless Riley Ridley writes a book, because I have no idea. They seemed very high on Riley Ridley, and I remember being excited about Riley Ridley and what he could potentially be as far as blossoming as a 4th round pick?
Correct.
So there was a lot of potential there for him to be a full-time contributor, and I just don't. And even when there was opportunities for him to get on the field, they just never really incorporated him. When Javon Wims gets suspended, you thought, okay, finally Riley Ridley's going to, and he did get on the field, but you just never saw him get the opportunities that you thought he was. Now, is that because he just couldn't do it? He couldn't hack it physically? Did he, was he in the doghouse with the coaching staff for some reason? I don't know that reason. And that's just another one of those draft picks and another one of those decisions where you're just like, well, what the hell? Why didn't it work out? And so, I don't know what to make of that whole Riley Ridley situation.
Yeah, the rumor that we heard here at the bar room was that Riley Ridley challenged Matt Nagy during his rookie year in camp. He challenged him on some of the route running, saying, well, this is the way we did it at Georgia and so forth, and that Nagy didn't particularly like it, and that kind of set him back in the depth chart, and the season went along, and he never got any playing time and was rarely activated. That's a rumor, only a rumor, so unconfirmed, but that's what we heard. And if that's true, then shame on Matt Nagy, and shame on Matt Nagy for not listening to Mitch Trubisky, and shame on Matt Nagy for not playing David Montgomery more. To answer Vince's question, let's remember that Matt Nagy, when he got the opportunity to call plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, he, on the most important game that he's called in his career at that point, that playoff game, he forgot all about Kareem Hunt. He forgot about running the ball. He blew that game with his play calling, and he apologized about it afterwards. And so what does he do? And when he comes to the Chicago Bears, it's the same thing. He has a lack of respect for whoever it is that's running the ball, whether it was Jordan Howard or David Montgomery. And he finally starts to pay attention to running the ball in the middle of his 3rd season. And he's doing it because the assistant coaches that he brought in, the offensive coordinator, are bugging him. Hey, come on, you got to run the ball. You got David Montgomery. I know that the offensive line isn't playing well, but if you stay committed to it, you will get some results because this guy is good. And that's what finally happens. So when you list all of the bad things that Matt Nagy has done in his coaching career with the Chicago Bears, it's not listening to players and not utilizing the players that Pace has gotten him, players that he wanted. This guy's a good fit for my offense. David Montgomery, let's get him. So, that's a big fault against Matt Nagy. Now, what we have to hope for is what they have told us at these press conferences. McCaskey, Phillips, that they're learning. These guys are good guys. They're learning. They admit their mistakes and so forth. So
what the hell? I never. It took a 6-game losing streak and everyone calling for your job to finally run the ball. Yeah, that's learning something. Never in my life have I heard a 6-game losing streak turned into a positive so many times during a press conference. Like the way they handled adversity, the way they. How about another one of those hard questions? Why'd you lose 6 in a row to begin with anyway? Not how did you react to the 6-game losing streak? Why did you lose 6 in a row? So that's just another one of those. Oh my God, it makes me very upset because all they talked about was how they responded to the 6-game losing streak. Well, why the hell did you lose 6 in a row? And why did it take that for you to run the ball or for you to run an offense that might score some points? The learning my ass.
Yeah, they had to have a bye to figure out who were the best offensive linemen on the roster to put in there. And they didn't realize that, okay, Rashard Coward, he's not any good, He can't.
For as well as they practice, as well as Matt Nagy say they practice every week, you think they'd figure something out once in a while.
And the unknown Cuts ask, how would you guys feel if Fangio was still coaching this Bears team? Do you think they would still be in limbo or they would have actually reached their peak? There's no doubt in my mind that this defense would have played much closer to the 2018 Bears than they did the 2020 Bears because Fangio had figured it out. And Fangio not only figured it out, but more importantly is he had those veterans who now knew his defense and could play it with their eyes shut. He had figured out these complicated schemes, particularly in the defensive backfield where they would hide what they were doing. And then all of a sudden you're seeing them run, one guy running to the right, one guy running to the left and so forth. And they would befuddle quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers is throwing an interception to Eddie Jackson in the end zone at Soldier Field. He had figured it out. He had totally befuddled Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins. And there's no doubt in my mind that if Vic Fangio would have remained here with the Chicago Bears, this team would have been in the playoffs the last 2 seasons, despite the learning issues that Matt Nagy has.
I love these hypothetical questions just because it's just so fun to surmise about these. So I guess you could say that if Fangio's the head, I'm gonna call and raise on this. What if Fangio after Trestman was elevated to head coach and he would have been the head coach of the Chicago Bears and they would have brought in someone else to run the offense as the offensive coordinator? Do you think this Bears team actually performs better because Fangio keeps the defense and he's in for everything we've heard? Fangio's like a good football guy, good, he can be a good head coach, just kind of being able to put people in the right position. If he's the head coach of the Bears and they outsource the offense to somebody else, do you think that this team actually has more success than they do now? Because I say yes.
Yes, I say yes too.
Okay, yeah, because obviously you have someone who's going to be running the offense who's not going to be play calling and head coach and thinks that they can do everything at the same time. Fangio runs the defense, and obviously, how much worse could the offense have been? How whoever they would have brought in to run the offense, would it have been worse than what the product we saw on the field? So I think that if Fangio would have been the head coach, and I'm not saying they win the Super Bowl, but I think that they probably would have performed better. Maybe they win. Maybe they'd play a lot better. We forget that this team could have maybe made a Super Bowl run in 2018. So maybe something shakes out a little differently there. But yeah, if Fangio's still there, there's no doubt in my mind that this team is in much better shape, whether he's the coordinator or the head coach. I just feel like he's just a good coach, and there's a reason he got a head coaching job. So yeah, him being around would have been a big difference.
John Buffone is our guest here at Dan and Aldo Bear Their Souls. Dan had to take off. He had to drive through the snow to his 9/11 job. 9/11, 911. He's a 911 operator, emergency operator, so he's driving on his way to his job. John, of course, is the host of Buffone 55, the John Buffone show. He and Alyssa Barbieri do a fabulous job with that show. And he and Alyssa also do the show called Pass the Mic. And hopefully you guys have been listening in on that show. They interview women in the sports industry, sports broadcasting business, and get their stories on what is happening with their careers, the challenges that they faced. This last show, John, talk about this guest that you had on last show. She was fabulous.
Yeah, a wonderful guest. Her name was Miriam Walker-Khan, and she's a freelance reporter for BBC Sport in the United Kingdom. And this is the first person we've interviewed from the United Kingdom on this show, and we wanted to get a different perspective because this has been a really rewarding experience as far as talking to all these accomplished women. And and I'll be honest, I know why we started the show, and I know why it was important that we do this show. But to listen to all of these stories really gives you a new perspective, and it really makes you think about some of the things that are still happening in the year 2021, especially to some of these really accomplished women in sports, and they're just constantly harassed and ridiculed for how they look or what they're wearing, or they're just not taken seriously because they're female. And just listening to some of these stories that and a lot of the times these women say, this is the first time I've talked about this, or I've never brought this up in public before, or I've never considered this before. And our show gives them the platform to talk about those things. So Miriam Walker-Khan, she talked about her rise in covering sports in the United Kingdom. And there are some differences in the United States as opposed to the United Kingdom as far as covering sports. And she made a good point about how in the United States, she believes that we take it much more seriously as far as this could be front page stuff, whereas in the UK, sometimes you're not taken as seriously. And her being a woman in the sports industry and also being a person of color, she has been not just not taken seriously, but has been called names, and she's been obviously social media has created a new avenue for people to be cruel all across the world. So she was incredibly intelligent, incredibly insightful, and some of these things were difficult to listen to, but they were important to listen to. So I hope that everyone gives that not only our most recent show, but all of our shows of Pass the Mic. Please give them a listen. They're not incredibly long. They're not time sensitive, so you can listen to them at any point. They're so if you listen to them today, tomorrow, a month from now, they're still fresh, and it's a very bingeable show because every story is very unique.
Yeah, and one of these days I'm going to organize all those shows that they're easier to find on our network page, and so when I do that, I will make sure to publicize it in our social media channels, because it really is a great listen. And besides the great storytelling that is fashioned through John and Alyssa's questions and the guest's response, it's just very important to listen to these stories and share these stories with family members. And if you've got kids who are thinking about getting into the broadcast industry, whether they're male or female, but especially females, they really will benefit from listening to some of the stories and how people have overcome some of these challenges. Wade Marie says that she listens and really enjoys the show. All right, our final topic here before we say adieu is the Super Bowl. There's a little game being played Sunday, and it's called the Super Bowl. It's Kansas City Chiefs versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The main storyline, of course, is Patrick Mahomes, the next great big thing. He's definitely that already. And Tom Brady, in his waning years, gets back into the Super Bowl with a whole new team. What's your assessment on this game so far as we move into the middle of the week? And are you anticipating a great game, a so-so game? Are you anticipating a great quarterback battle? What are your thoughts?
Just before I heard this, I guess it's a stat or this fact, that when Tom Brady was born, the number one song was Hotel California, and when Patrick Mahomes was born, it was Gangster's Paradise by Coolio. So there's quite a contrast in eras there. But I find this as a fascinating matchup, and it's not even the same. I don't think it's the same as last year with Kansas City and San Francisco. San Francisco was a very overall good team. They didn't have a lot of holes. They just didn't have that real wow factor to go out and win. I think that the job that the Tampa Bay defense has done in the playoffs is going to carry over, and they can maybe get some pressure with that front four. I'm not saying that they're going to, hold Patrick Mahomes to, 10, 13 points, but they might be able to make a play or two. And it'll be vital that I don't think that Tom Brady's going to get away with throwing, consecutive picks in this particular game, but they have enough firepower on offense where they can make it a game. I think this is fascinating. I'm interested to see what Mike North thinks the betting odds are on this, or who you should go with on this. But honestly, I think that Tampa Bay has a real chance just because of the way that their defense has been playing, and as long as they. And I shouldn't have to say this about a Tom Brady team, but as long as they don't, turn the ball over, I think they're going to be right there at the end.
Yeah, but we did see Brady throw three consecutive interceptions in that game against the Packers, and really, it should be the Packers playing Mahomes, but
they couldn't capitalize. The defense stepped up, and they could not capitalize.
That's right, and the Bucs do have a pretty good defense. A lot of people kind of overlook them because it's Brady this and Brady that. I just asked in the chat room, who would you like to have as the Bears quarterback in 2021 and beyond? A 21-year-old Patrick Mahomes or a 21-year-old Tom Brady? Now, you know what Tom Brady is going to do over the course of his career because you've witnessed it, you've seen it, you've experienced it. You don't know exactly what Mahomes is going to do, but over the last 3 years that he's been a quarterback, 4 years he's been a quarterback with KC, he certainly looks like he could be one of the all-time greats. So, John, you're this fantasy football general manager of Chicago Bears. Who do you got, Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady?
Well, let me ask you a question. If he's going to be the quarterback for the Bears, do I already know Brady's going to win 6 championships, or am I just taking them as they are?
No, you know that he's going to win 6 championships, and you're betting that Mahomes is going to win as many or more.
Nope, give me the 6 Super Bowls. Nope, that's fine. I will take 6 Super Bowls for the Bears any day of the week. Now, if you're asking me, and let's just say we're wiping away the futures. I can either take a 21-year-old Patrick Mahomes or a 21-year-old Tom Brady. I probably take Mahomes just because he shows the physical skills and the ability to win the game on his own as a 21-year-old. Because if you remember Brady, it's not like he wasn't a world beater at his first 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years. Let's just say first 3 or 4 years in New England. They had a great defense, and they had that short passing game to Antoine Smith, and they had the tight ends there. He didn't really start lighting things up until they brought in Randy Moss and Wes Welker, and they 2007 he started setting records. So I think Mahomes has done a hell of a lot more as a young quarterback than Brady has, although Brady is going to have the hardware. It's just going to be hard for me to say, nah, give me Mahomes when I know Brady has, he has more rings than fingers. So I'll take Brady knowing the result, but if from a skill standpoint, give me Patrick Mahomes.
I'm going to go on the line here and say on the limb and say that I think Patrick Mahomes is going to win more championships than Tom Brady.
I have 7?
Yeah, I think he'll have 7. I think he'll have I think he's going to win Sunday against Tom Brady. I think it's going to be the official passing of the torch. What's Tom Brady's record going to be in Super Bowls? It'll be like 500, right? Because he's been
this will be his 10th, so he would be 6-4.
6-4. So
because he lost to the Giants twice and the Eagles.
Okay. All right. So, well, I will say he will win as many as Tom Brady. So 6 or 7, he'll win as many. There's something about Patrick Mahomes that is just magical that I don't see that in Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady benefited a lot from playing with good all-around teams, good defenses. You look back at some of the stats and some of the Super Bowls that Tom Brady actually won in the Super Bowl, and his stats weren't that good. That game against the Rams, he wasn't all that great. But, he won because Bill Belichick made some good coaching decisions. There was good leadership on the team. Everything kind of worked out, and Brady certainly had a great role in winning those championships. I'm not trying to denigrate his accomplishments at all, but there is something when I look at what Patrick Mahomes does athletically and creatively, it's something that I rarely see in an NFL quarterback. And the fact that he has already now won an NFL Super Bowl, if he beats this Bucs team with the experience that Brady brings, with the defensive firepower that the Bucs have, and with this weak offensive line that he's going to go out into the field with, it's weak because of injuries, then I'm going to say, well, this is number 2. Man, holy cow, he could win 3 or 4 in a row, and by the time it's over, he could have 7 or 8. So I hate to say that because, again, we could have had Mahomes on the Chicago Bears, but I don't know. I'm in awe of Patrick Mahomes. I really am.
If Brady wins, though, he'd have 7, and then Mahomes would have to get 8 to overtake him. So maybe this is a tilting point on that, and it's just really interesting. Or maybe sad if you're looking at it from a Bears fan standpoint, that basically for the rest of Patrick Mahomes' career, which could be another, 13, 14 years, if they don't win the Super Bowl, it's a disappointment. Like imagine having that as like your expectations every year. It's like, we have the best quarterback potentially of all time. If we don't win a Super Bowl, it is a letdown. And you know that you're going to at least be in the mix every year because you have that guy. That has to be just, I don't know. I don't have that feeling, but I also think there's a lot of unknowns as well because Andy Reid's going to be 63 in March. So is he going to be Patrick Mahomes' coach for the next 10, 12 years? Is he going to coach? Is Andy Reid going to coach until he's 75? Is he going to coach until he's in his mid-70s? So eventually there's going to have to be some turnover there. And at least with Brady in New England, he knew Belichick was going to be there. Belichick's still there. I don't know how much longer Andy Reid is going to coach. If he wins another Super Bowl or 2, do you think Andy Reid's going to be the guy that says, I'm going to hang on for another 10 years to see if I can win 7 Super Bowls? Maybe not, because he's already going to be in his mid-60s. So I think that and I'm not saying that Mahomes can't win with a different coach, but I just said there's an opportunity there for a little more shakeup. And Tom Brady always took pay cuts to bring other guys in. Mahomes did not take a pay cut, in case you didn't look at his contract. So he's going to be eating up a lot of salary cap. Tom Brady didn't need that because he had his wife's money. He didn't need to make any extra money. He didn't need to have to nickel and dime the Patriots. Patrick Mahomes is going to getting paid, and he's going to be a big part of the salary cap. Now it could go up in the next 5-6 years. It could go up substantially, but for the near future, he's going to be eating up a big chunk of their salary cap. So they're going to have to be creative with that as well. I just think there's a lot of unknowns left for Patrick Mahomes.
I think one of the things about Tom Brady that I like, and I begrudgingly pay him respect. It's just something annoying about Tom Brady. He's got these great looks. He's got this gorgeous wife. He's got all these rings and stuff. But one of the things I respect him for is that he has given up a lot of salary dollars to help the team with the cap. He has been really, really good about that with the Patriots and even with the Bucs. So that is, he's just much more dedicated to winning championships. He's got that will and thirst to win that you really, that I can compare to a Michael Jordan. Now, he doesn't have the athletic skills of a Michael Jordan, and he cannot put a game on his back like a Michael Jordan did. And we're, of course, comparing football and basketball, two totally different sports. But my point is I just have a lot of respect for his will to win. Logan Frost says, Tom Brady has done more with less, and Mahomes has always had big weapons. And that's a great point, Logan. There's no doubt about it that, Mahomes is going to have to prove over the course of his career that he can win without the Travis Kelce's and the Tyreek Hills and the first round draft pick at the running back position, and then before him the Kareem Hunt and so forth. That there's a lot of things that he still has to prove. I just feel like he will prove them because he's just that kind of guy. And then regarding your comment on Andy Reid was asked last year after the Super Bowl, you had kind of hinted about retirement in the next few years and so forth. What are your plans about retirement? He goes, now with this new quarterback that I got, I think I'm going to be around for a while.
I wouldn't blame him. I just don't know if it's going to be another 10 years. Where I mean, I think Mahomes will outlast Reed in Kansas City, and just because it's just I can't imagine a 75-year-old Andy Reid out there just coaching the Chiefs. I can't see it. But if they win 5 or 6 Super Bowls, who's to say? But Brady said that he could see himself playing past age 45. So what if it's fully capable, or it's fully possible that that Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl. He could do it on Sunday and maybe pick up another one somewhere, and then that would put him at 8. So that's I feel like 8. I think it's insurmountable. If he gets 8, I don't think anyone's getting 9.
Yeah, he definitely belongs already into that pantheon of great athletes like Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky, when he started putting up these records in the NHL, I mean, he didn't break records. He just obliterated them. I mean, he went from, the highest goal scorer was 72 goals, Phil Esposito, I believe. And then he added 20 goals to that when he broke Esposito's record. It's just ridiculous. And so Tom Brady is kind of in that echelon now of being in 10 Super Bowls over the last 20 years. I mean, that's unbelievable. And if he ends up winning 7 or 8, that's just unreal. All right. Yeah. I think we're ready to pull the plug on this one. I want to let people know that the Mike North Show will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning at 9:30. Mike and I are going to talk about the Super Bowl game, about the Bears quarterback competition. And I'm going to throw some prop bets at Mike and have some fun about who's going to win the coin flip and blah, blah, blah. We'll keep track of that. So if you love to gamble, join us. And if you just love good storytelling, then join us, because Mike always has great stories to share. And then on Sunday, we're going to expand the Barfly Tailgate Show, and we're inviting all of our barroom hosts to pop in. John, you're invited, and everyone else who works at the barroom. We're going to preview the Super Bowl game and just have some fun talking about Bears football and, of course, the big game. So that should be fun. Let's see what Alex sent his. Alex says, Aldo, keep the same teams, but switch locations. So the Bears with their roster in Tampa and Tampa's roster in Chicago. Do you think Brady would have gone to Bears if they weren't in the cold? The fact of the matter, reports say that the Bears were in play for Tom Brady, and he was considering it because his family was going to stay in New York. And so he was interested in joining a good team and that shorter commute from Chicago to New York. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. And I'll tell you what, if Tom Brady would have come to the Chicago Bears, and it's something that I talked about a little bit during the last season, and people kind of poo-pooed me, but I thought, hey, the guy knows how to win. Bring him onto this Bears roster, and I think we'll win. I'll ask you, John, hindsight being 2020, if Tom Brady was somehow landed by Ryan Pace last season instead of Nick Foles, and Tom Brady's the number 1 quarterback for the 2020 season, do the Bears get into the playoffs and maybe are playing Sunday?
They get into the playoffs and they do better. I don't think they make the Super Bowl, just because you see the weapons that Tampa Bay has, and it's just not. I don't think that you can really draw too many parallels with the Chicago Bears when you have Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and they bring in Leonard Fournette and they bring in Gronk, and so I just feel like that it was a good situation for Tom Brady, and I don't blame him for taking the warm weather in Tampa with no state income tax either. So go to Florida, and so I think the Bears are. I mean, it's not. I'm not going out on a limb and saying the Bears would have been better with Tom Brady. I don't think we're really talking about that. But I think they could probably make the divisional round, maybe even the championship game if Tom Brady is their quarterback. But coulda, shoulda, woulda.
There you go. All right, John, I hope to see you on Sunday's Barfly Tailgate Show. I'll send you all the details in Slack, and let's make a little pre-Super Bowl party here on the Barroom Network. And, of course, remember to listen to the Mike North Show on Wednesday and go over to our podcast channel. Just Google Bears Barroom Radio Network, and that's where you'll find John's show, Pass the Mic, and you'll find all of our library of other shows. So do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Leave us a comment, and then hit that little bell too, because that way you'll be alerted whenever we've got a show here on our YouTube channel. So thanks all very much, and John, thanks a lot for popping in. This has been a blast. I hope you had fun too.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, Aldo.
All right, take care, everybody.